Care to call the roll?
Chair Huseman,
Present.
Vice Chair Allen Thomas,
Present.
Commissioner Madera, Commissioner Noble,
Present.
Commissioner Hurst, Commissioner Kim,
Present accounted for.
Commissioner Ford,
Here.
Commissioner Douglas.
Present.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Looking for a motion second to excuse the members not present.
So,
Commissioner Ford. Commissioner Kim.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to excuse the members not present. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, resolution amending land sale for a hotel at Mile High Greyhound Park. I'll invite Bill Aiken, Director of Urban Renewal, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the CCURA. Tonight, we have one request. It's for an amendment to the purchase and sale agreement by and between the CCURA and Pure Strike is the hotel developer for Mile High Greyhound Park. I have a brief presentation. As you're aware, these are the renderings that you considered about a year ago when you entered into a purchase and sales agreement with the hotel project. We are at a very exciting time for the hotel, which is shown in the polygon in pink on your screen here at the intersection of Highway 2 and the proposed 63rd Avenue, which the CCURA will be constructing in 2023. The reason it's an exciting time is because we are past the due diligence period with the hotel, and it is time to establish a closing date in January. What we are looking to do is close on the 2-acre tract that's highlighted on your screen here on January 31st of 2023. The purchase price is identical to what we had negotiated last year and agreed to March of this year, which is $12 a square foot. Now that the property's been surveyed, it's actually valued at about $70,000 more based on that $12 per square foot than was originally proposed. At about $1.2 million is the transactional value for that tract of land. This is the site plan here that's currently being reviewed by the city, the fire department, and the water sanitation, showing the hotel property. What the city URA committed to do earlier this year when we agreed in the current purchase and sales agreement is that we would commence design and use commercially reasonable efforts to diligently pursue these 5 items. That we said that we would install utilities to serve the property, that we would construct 63rd Avenue, that we would construct Elm Street, that we would install streetlights, and that we would construct a curb cut for the hotel. As of today's date, actually last Friday, we received great news from the engineering department that our permits had been approved by the city. We had a wonderful meeting with the fire district today as well as the sanitation district, and we're hoping to have final approvals for our permit this upcoming Friday so that we'd have a permit in hand next week and can start these improvements that are due to the hotel at closing. So this is what those improvements look like on a map. So we said we would install the stormwater, we would do the sewer, we would do the water, we would build 63rd, and we would give them a curb cut so they could access their site. Because the hotel is ready to move into construction phase, which we had anticipated would be done by October, and now we're getting very close to their schedule when they need to start their work, they've asked if they could move forward to establish a closing date on January 31st, 2023, that we would change the responsible party so that the URA would not be constructing those out of our pocket, the water, the sewer, and the access to their property, that there would be a reduction in price that would be reflected at closing on January 31st, and that there would be an easement that would need to go over the hotel's private property that would be dedicated to the city for a sidewalk in the future. So let me show you what that looks like right here. So the area in red is a private drive to the hotel that we were supposed to build and deliver to them. They're now asking if they can do that. They're asking if they can install their own sewer to their property from the existing manhole that's in 63rd Avenue, and they're asking if they can install their own water line. We do have cost estimates for this work. The work is anticipated to cost about $160,000. Those are the bids that we received as a CCURA. So in the amendment where we talk about that would be a direct reflection of the price of the land in January, that we have the right to audit those numbers, and that if we don't agree on them, to come back to the CCURA. And then this is the area of the access easement. It was a request by the engineering department here at Commerce City to move that sidewalk further away from the future 63rd. There's a conflict existing with utilities and a transformer that serves all of the streetlights in the development. So rather than reconfiguring that road or trying to get the power company out to relocate that transformer, it was a lot easier to move that sidewalk on the hotel property and then to provide us with a public access easement in perpetuity. What we're looking for tonight is a motion. Staff's recommendation is to approve URA Resolution 2022-29, which would authorize and direct the CCURA Executive Director or his designee to execute the First Amendment to the Purchase and Sales Agreement that, again, would establish a closing date of January 31st, would allow the developer to complete certain infrastructure improvements to their property, and would allow for a public access easement over their property. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them for you at this time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate their presentations. Anybody on the URA board have any questions for staff regarding the presentation? And then just have one question. The dollar value that is going to be reduced for the purchase price is only equal to what it will cost for those improvements to be done?
Yes, sir. So we were supposed to do those improvements. Instead, they'll do the improvements and then we'll subtract it from the purchase price.
Okay, it's a dollar for dollar match?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hurst?
What's the percentage expectation that they meet the 166,000?
I'm sorry.
Are you going to come back to us if it's 5% over 166,000, 10% over, 15%? Like, what's that cutoff?
We haven't talked directly about a percentage change. The numbers that we have were last provided in August, so we'll get new numbers in January. We anticipate about 155,000 is the cost. If they came back and said it's 200,000 or something along that line, we would definitely want to bring it back here. There's also an opportunity that we could choose to do the work ourselves. So if they come back and they say it's 200,000, we still have the right and the freedom to do the work ourselves per the amendment, similar to the original contract. The hotel is just really, where the hotel is at is that they need to start construction. We had originally committed to having these improvements done by October, but since we haven't been able to secure permits, we haven't started, and they've basically said, we'd prefer to do it ourselves at our pace and get it done rather than potentially have delays or wait longer.
Yeah, I would, to make it maybe more useful, I don't see it being an issue as long as it's, measured with the same construction cost index. If it increases, along the lines from August till delivery time from there, I don't think we need to come back to approve it. But if it's crazy high, I just want to know what that cutoff is. If they come back and say 200, then I do think you should come back to us first.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? What's the penalty for not closing on January 31st for either party?
So there are several different ways that the Commerce City URA could pursue them. It'd likely be through litigation. The money is already hard. We do have Caitlin Quander on this call as well, our attorney, but their money is hard. They are required to close. And we'd have to pursue the legal remedies in our contract if they did not close on January 31st, which would likely be some form of litigation.
And is everything ready on the city side to close on January 31st? No surprises, no delays, no special meetings needing to be called in the month of January to approve something that hasn't been taken care of as of today?
No, sir. This amendment here contemplates everything getting done and closing January 31st. The way that it's written is that we will continue to exercise commercially reasonable efforts and due diligence to get the improvements installed. So we are going to continue to work as hard as possible to get all the improvements installed, but they are closing January 31st per contract.
I'm holding you to that.
Please do.
All right, looking for a motion and a second to adopt a resolution URA 2022-29. Commissioner Hurst,
So moved.
Vice Chair.
Second the motion.
Have a motion and a second to adopt resolution URA 2022-29. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. We have Renee Lovato and Craig Machuga. Are they capable of voting?
Yes, yes, sir.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion, Mr. Boucher?
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously, 10-0 with a couple absences. All right, at this time, we will adjourn the URA meeting. This is a hybrid meeting of the City Council. Members of the public can view this meeting live on Channel 8, the city's website, and YouTube. Live Spanish translation services are being provided for tonight's council meeting by telephone. Please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091 *.
Se ofrecen servicios de interpretación en español para esta reunión del Consejo Municipal por teléfono. Marque el número 720-386-9023 y utilice el código 104091 #.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. City Clerk is the host of the Zoom meeting. Speakers will be able to unmute themselves when recognized. This time, I will call the meeting to order. Ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Huseman,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas,
Present.
Councilmember Madera, Councilmember Noble,
Present.
Councilmember Hurst,
Present.
Councilmember Kim, Councilmember Ford,
Here.
Councilmember Douglas.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Now I'm looking for a motion second to excuse the member not present. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Hurst.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to excuse the member not present. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, do a voice vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0, one excused absence. This time, I'd like to invite everybody present remotely to join us in a moment of silence and then the Pledge of Allegiance. And would like to take a moment to remember and recognize all the Commerce City residents that are not going to be celebrating the new year with us, and wish their families blessings in going forward, and thoughts and prayers in their loss. Also would like to take a moment to just plead to everybody, please do not drink and drive this holiday season. It's just not worth it. Call somebody. If you need to, call me. I'm more than happy to come pick you up and give you a ride. I'd rather do that than hear about another fatality on one of our roadways. So please do not drink and drive. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to move on to public comment, citizen communication. All public comment will occur during citizen communication except for public hearings. Persons who registered to speak on the multiple items will be allowed to speak multiple times. Per council policy, citizen communication is the time on our agenda for the public to address council on business and affairs of the city. City council is not able to hear any comments at this time on land use matters that are before or may come before council. Please reserve your comments for the appropriate public hearing. As a reminder, we take your comments seriously, but do not generally respond to comments until later in the evening during administrative council business. Per council policy CP2 and CP20, all speakers are encouraged to state their points briefly. Repetitious remarks shall be avoided, and we're just going to skip that line. We have 3 virtual speakers signed up. First is going to be Christy Pollard.
Christy, if you're in the Zoom meeting, you can hit *9 on your phone or use the raise hand function in Zoom. Christy Pollard.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize, I'm in the audience.
Okay, great. If you wouldn't mind just having a seat, and we'll call you back up, okay? All right, next is going to be P. Jonathan Hero.
P. Jonathan Hero, if you're
He's
in the
also
Zoom.
present in the
Present.
audience. All right, Florence Marino.
Florence, if you're in the Zoom meeting, you can hit *9 on your phone or use the raise hand function in Zoom. Florence Marino. Mayor Huseman, I do not see Florence in the Zoom meeting.
All right. We'll go to our in-person list. We'll start with Christy Pollard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. Happy holidays. My name is Christy Pollard, and I'm the Executive Director of the Metro District Education Coalition. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts this evening with respect to ordinance number 2453, which Council will be considering this evening. We would like to ask for your consideration of opposition to ordinance number 2453. As a nonprofit committed to educating the public on the role that metro districts play in our communities to help keep the cost of housing low, we are concerned with the city's extreme response to this important financing tool. We believe that this approach will lead to the unintended consequence of slowing the development of new communities within the city, which will ultimately decrease the inventory of new homes and will exacerbate housing affordability challenges. Further, this approach will require a significant increase in the cost of new homes that are built and will potentially make the dream of homeownership unattainable for many families. And finally, this measure will limit the much-needed commercial investment that the community needs and craves. Over the course of the past 2 years, the city has spent countless hours and taxpayer dollars on bringing stakeholders and experts to the table with the city to understand concerns and offer solutions to strengthen the city's standards for approving service plans. Most recently, the city funded a study by an independent third-party entity, EPS, to provide an analysis of the financial impacts of proposed policy changes to its Metro District policies and its model Metro District service plan. The recommendation of each of these activities were done with the goal of avoiding unintended consequences for the city and helping to establish the goal of affordable housing, resident protections, and greater commercial investment. Establishing a moratorium undermines this effort, raises concerns about the public process, and will potentially undermine future collaborative processes that the city undertakes. Metro districts are a tool that allows development to pay its own way. It is a fair and equitable way to fund the development, construction, and maintenance of roads, sewers, parks, and trails in our communities. Establishing a moratorium on this funding mechanism will decrease the number of homes that are built going forward and will increase the total cost of buying a home by building the cost of the public infrastructure into home prices and raising borrowing costs for public infrastructure in new communities. A moratorium will also push commercial investment to communities where certainty of process and local customers exist. We acknowledge the city's desire to create greater protections for its residents and would urge you to find those solutions without reverting to extreme measures that will have unintended consequences. We continue to stand ready, willing, and able to help with those efforts should the city change its course and vote down the idea of a moratorium for residential metro districts. We urge a no vote and look forward to working with the city to find collaborative solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anybody on council have any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, I do have a question. This isn't the first time that you've come to speak before us, is it?
No, sir.
When was the last time that you came to speak with us?
It was, I believe, August, during one of the last considerations of some of the regulation changes.
And you stood at the podium and opposed those changes too, right?
We did not oppose them. We offered some suggestions to modifications. It was prior to EPS's recommendations, but we did participate in the stakeholder engagement process and the town hall meetings that you had and appreciated the opportunity to offer our input.
Thank you. And you said you're a nonprofit?
Yes, sir.
Where do you get most of your funding from?
We are funded from different businesses. We are not funded by developers or home builders. We are funded through different CPAs, attorneys, and practitioners who work with and around metro districts.
And so all those that are funding you are basically those that gained to, or stand to gain from having metro districts created?
They work with and support Metro
Thank you.
District. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Have a good evening. P. Jonathan Hero.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for allowing me some time. My name is Jonathan Hiru, and I work for Piper Sandler in Denver. Our business address is 1144 15th Street, Denver. My focus at Piper for the last 29 years has been working with special districts throughout Colorado, both residential and commercial in nature, to create metropolitan districts and assisting metropolitan districts in raising capital through the issuance of tax-exempt bonds. After reading Ordinance 2453, I want to share some thoughts and observations regarding the potential impact and approval of this ordinance could have. Potential moratorium on metropolitan districts that have more than a 10% component of residential development that automatically renews each January 1st will in effect cause the residential development community to look for other communities for their projects. With no specific event being noted in the ordinance stating what might change council's decision on not renewing the moratorium each January 1st, the development community will have little choice but to look to other communities for their projects due to the uncertainty of future development and timing of projects in Commerce City. While it is not the goal of council to stop commercial development, from my understanding, commercial developers may avoid Commerce City moving forward as commercial development follows residential development. When commercial development comes to a stop, so will sales tax revenue that would have been generated by this type of development. Future improvements within Commerce City will be impacted by the reduction potentially of future sales tax revenue that would have come from these commercial projects. Generally, when a community considers a significant change to its development policy, feasibility study or report is completed so council and the residents of the community can see what the possible impact will be, both positive and negative, are shared and stated for everyone to understand. With no such report or feasibility study being completed, does Commerce City and its residents fully understand the financial and economic impact of this proposed ordinance? Colorado does have a housing affordability issue. Metropolitan districts have been shown to keep the cost of housing more affordable for residents. How will Commerce City combat this problem with a moratorium on residential metropolitan districts? The choice to live in a metropolitan district is made by the future property owner. While residents who live in metropolitan districts often pay higher taxes, they also receive a community with greater amenities. Why would Commerce City want to limit the choice for its current and future residents by passing this ordinance? Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the speaker? Thanks, sir. Appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Steve Douglas.
Happy holidays, Mayor and City Council. I have a few things here. First of all, Steve Douglas, 10970 Unity Parkway. I have a question about the flat concrete management. One thing is, I'm asking, is the sidewalk repairs included with the flat concrete management? Let's see, the other thing is, could you guys please fix 104th and Tower intersection? It's turned into a speedway and people jogging just to get in front of each other so they can get set in line before they head north through the intersection is becoming very dangerous. The other concern I have, just these folks are here, we're opposing ordinance 2453 of the moratorium. I'm asking you as a resident, for over 19 years, I believe metro districts have been a total disaster. The categorization has been misused. We used to live in Aurora and it was just an HOA neighborhood, wasn't a metro district. Our taxes were $1,500 a year. We were paying $8,500 a year for metro districts, and it's just going up. It's out of control. So not only by passing this moratorium, but between now and next year, you need to set some sort of policy so you have policy that sticks. Going forward, if you come to develop in Commerce City, you will know what your parameters are. And it should be a lot of smaller number than what they are. And not even have metro districts. You don't need a metro district. That's just a cash cow. The other thing I need to ask, I know we're talking about land development cases on that coming forward, but I just needed to know, I'll give you the title, you can say yes or no. I'm sure you're gonna say no. It's Z941-17-19-21-22. This was before planning, it got pulled, and I just want to know, was it approved administratively? And if so, it really should have gone before the URA. The other thing I'd like to bring up is, I know it's not part of this, there's a resolution about easement for 27J School District, Yeah, I'm not opposing that at all. It's just that I think the city needs to be ahead of this when the high school is being developed. The other side of Landmark Drive, if that's going to continue up to Reunion Parkway, or is it going to cut through so it lines up with Landmark Drive going to the south? Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Does anybody on council have any questions for the speaker? Councilmember Kim?
Mr. Douglas, what was that case number that you had referenced? It was pretty long there.
Is it okay to say that, City Attorney? Okay. It's case number Z-941-17-19-21-22, track F.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
That's all, Mayor.
Councilmember Noble?
Mr. Douglas, do you have an address for that property?
You know, for the sidewalk, no, I was looking for it, and it ended up that property was previously repaired by the city, and then the sidewalks even again based on the past issue that was already done patchwork for actually replaced the concrete portion of the sidewalk. And so homeowners told that they would have to take care of it. It's going to cost them $20,000 for, I think, four slabs of concrete.
And what about the case that you believed should have gone before URA? What are its cross streets?
It has to do with setbacks, the zero setbacks. I don't know if I could, it's a Greyhound Park PUD to allow smaller lot size and setbacks for fee simple townhomes lots on track F, located at the northeast corner of East 96th Place and Glencoe Street.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Do we know what the status of that is then?
Thank you, ma'am. That application was actually withdrawn by the developer.
Solves that. Thank you very much.
All right, we have one more speaker, arrived a little late, Morgan Colon.
Good evening, Mayor Hoosman, members of the Commerce City Council. My name is Morgan Cullen, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the Home Builders Association of Metro Denver to share our collective concerns on the residential construction industry on the proposed moratorium on metropolitan districts here in Commerce City this evening. These comments are also consistent with a letter that we submitted to Council last week on December 14th. Prior to a Metro District moratorium being proposed at the City Council's November 7th study session, the city had worked diligently for over a year on a Metro District reform proposal and studied the potential consequences the new regulations might have on the city and its residents. Over the course of the year, council members and staff met with members of the development community on the issue, and Metro District-related town halls were organized to solicit input and feedback from Commerce City residents. The city even hired a third-party consultant, Economic and Planning Systems, to provide independent analysis on the potential impact such a measure might have. However, these conversations held by council, staff, and stakeholders revolved entirely around the prospect of a reform proposal and looked at the potential impact of policy issues like mill levy caps, assessment ratio adjustments, and 35-year debt limitation services. Conversations about the potential consequences of a Metro District moratorium were never explored or contemplated. This evening, City Council is set to take a second final reading vote to impose a moratorium on Metro Districts less than a month after it was formally introduced and without the similar conscientious approach it had taken previously. Moratorium are the most drastic of measures that create ripple effects and unintended consequences which can last for years or even decades. And yet this council nor municipal staff have yet to provide or commission any meaningful analysis about the impacts this moratorium might have on future residential or commercial development, economic growth, local tax and impact fee revenues, housing attainability, or even just the general welfare and quality of life for Commerce City residents. We believe this vote tonight is a hasty maneuver, which has not been fully contemplated, and it circumvents the most important part of policy making, and that's public process. Thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Noble?
Thank you. Thank you, yeah. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I'm going to talk about this later, but I don't know if you're going to be here when we have our debate. Were you planning on staying?
I'm hopeful I will.
Okay, well, let me do this just in case you have to leave, since it comes at the end of the agenda, is that would the HBA, the Home Builders Association, be willing to use its power to advance legislation at the state level that reins in the kind of developers who take advantage of Title 32 to profit at the expense of home buyers and burden homeowners? Would you be willing to advance legislation that reins in developers who abuse the system? And I'm not talking about the majority of developers. I'm talking about those who abuse it.
Yep. Thank you for the question, Councilwoman Noble. Yes, we actually supported legislation in previous sessions. We're actually working and contemplating on additional legislation in the 2023 legislative session. And just for that matter too, we were working collaboratively with city staff and members of council on Metro District reform measures here in the city of Commerce City as well, prior to this moratorium being placed. So generally, we do support practical reform measures, but not, a blanket moratorium that's going to prohibit this critical financing tool completely.
We could debate whether it's a critical tool, but thank you very much for your answer.
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Cullen? Mr. Cullen? So I just heard you say generally the HBA supports amendments to HBA or to Metro District regulations, but on March 28, 2022, you emailed the City Council a letter signed by Ted Lady that said, in conclusion, we are strongly opposed to the city's proposed HOA requirement and encourage the City Council to consider the implications this important matter will have on the general welfare and property rights of future residents. So I find it a little incredulous that you stand there in front of all of us and tell us that you generally support changes to regulations on metro districts when you emailed this letter saying the HBA did not support those changes.
Yep, and then, thank you, Mayor. I actually went on to highlight those specific things that we actually disagreed upon on that specific proposal that was brought forward. Things like the Gallagher adjustment was part of that letter, I believe. Also that 35-year cap, debt service repayment cap, we found particularly stringent, and then some of the mill levy caps as well. So that's what we were focused on, was just some of those specifics that were laid out in the original proposal. But again, and just going back to my previous comments, we had a robust stakeholder process where we felt like we were able to work through a lot of those challenges and get to a place where the development community could ultimately live with and support the proposal that was before council before that was discarded and then moved forward and then replaced by a moratorium.
Councilmember Douglas?
Thank you. Thank you for staying at the podium, Mr. Collin. I really appreciate you being available to answer questions. So last session at the state capitol, Representative Mike Weisman ran a bill regarding metro districts. Were you in support of that bill?
What I recall, and this is actually a CAHB proposal, so I'm here on behalf of the Home Builders Association of Metro Denver. The Colorado Association of Home Builders is the ones that handle a lot of the state legislation, so I'll just be as familiar as I possibly can. But we ultimately supported legislation that was actually sponsored by Senator Zenzinger.
but not Representative Mike Weissman.
I'm not positive he actually introduced a bill. I think he was talking about.
He did. I testified, actually,
Okay.
as a citizen. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you all for speaking with us tonight. If follow-up is necessary, you should expect to be contacted by a staff member. Members of the public were able to submit written comments online and by mail. Written comments were received by the deadline and are included in the packet. If anyone wishes to speak at a future council meeting, please check the meeting agenda and city website for information on how to register or submit written comments. This time, we're going to move on to proclamations. We're going to start with Remembrance Day for Victims of the Holocaust. I'll invite the city clerk to read the proclamation.
Whereas on the 27th of January, we join with others around the world in remembering those who perished in the Holocaust and the families who lost countless loved ones to the heinous and cowardly acts of the Nazi regime. And whereas between 1933 and 1945, more than 6 million Jews and millions more people, including the Orma, Sinti, Slavs, differently abled, members of the LGBTQIA+ community, political dissidents, and others were deliberately killed for no other purpose but to stoke hate and fear. And whereas with anti-Semitic and other violence and rhetoric driven by hate on the rise, we must be better prepared and more alert to recognize and fight against another genocide by leaning and respecting the past, putting others on its feet, and perpetuating its memory. And whereas it is critical for our community to condemn all kinds of mass murder, hate speech, and hate crimes by remaining vigilant when looking for hatred and alerting authorities to any act that endangers humanity, as any small act of violence based on hate has repercussion on the souls of those who lost in the Holocaust. And tolerating even the smallest acts of bigotry, denial, racism, or intolerance can quickly escalate into catastrophe if not stopped in time. And whereas honoring the memory of victims of the Holocaust is vital to prevent future genocide and improve our society by reminding us that the worst of humanity is something in which we will not be complicit. Now, therefore, the City Council of Commerce City proclaims January 27th, 2023 as International Day of Remembrance of Victims of the Holocaust and joins with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission in encouraging all in our community to use the tools and knowledge of today to not take for granted the freedoms we enjoy. And we continue the fight through the words of Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl. When we are no longer able to change the situation, we are challenged to change ourselves.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Looking for a motion and a second to approve the proclamation. Mayor Pro Tem.
Make a motion to approve the proclamation.
Councilmember Noble.
I'll second that, and also I want to recognize all of our friends in the community who are celebrating their second night of Hanukkah tonight.
I just need a second at this time. I have a motion and a second to approve the proclamation. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0, one excused absence. Next up, we have a proclamation recognizing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I'll invite the Mayor Pro Tem to read the proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s tireless efforts for social change through nonviolence has had a revolutionary impact on the country and has paved the way for those today who have continued his noble work. And whereas we celebrate Dr. King's birthday on Monday, January 16th, 2023, to honor his legacy as a social justice advocate and a warrior of peace who called upon our nation to ensure equality for all under the law, upholding the country's founding principles which recognize each individual's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas through living his core values of truth, justice, compassion, brotherhood, service leadership, courage, and love, Dr. King led a movement for which the struggle for equality and equity is still fought today. And whereas in Commerce City and other communities alike, we will join the country in recognizing Dr. King's life and legacy, not just by honoring his memory, but also by empowering and joining those who continue to fight for equal opportunity under the law and equitable treatment regardless of the color of our skin. And whereas we can all take part in carrying out Dr. King's legacy of justice and acceptance by carrying the torch of love to light the way of our brothers and sisters of diverse backgrounds in our community and throughout the country. Now, therefore, the City of Commerce City recognizes January 16, 2023 as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and joins the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission in encouraging all in our community to honor Dr. King's memory by continuing to fight for justice and peace.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Would you like to make a motion?
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the proclamation.
Councilmember Kim?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the proclamation declaring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in Commerce City. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Douglas?
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment that both of these proclamations are so very, very important, especially in these days and times when we're starting to see what used to be swept under the rug to be normalized and actually sometimes praised as being as being outspoken and forthright. And in a way, I'm glad that is the case because now we can see their true colors, so to speak. And so what we need to start doing is calling out injustices and speaking up when we see them. And to speak out when we see people or hear people saying things that aren't right, to have the courage to stand up to those people. So I'm just so impressed with the fact that we have decided to make these proclamations for the city. And I just wanted to recognize how important they are. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, do a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0, one excused absence. I'm going to move on to notice to council business. This was brought up by Councilmember Dare. He's not here this evening, so told him I would support this. I'll go ahead and introduce this. The idea is that all the presentations that we've been having during council meetings get moved to study sessions. Purpose of the study session is to educate and to learn. Purpose of a council meeting is to conduct business and move the city forward. So I think it makes sense that we have study sessions during, have all our presentations, and anything that we're going to take action on, vote on, remains in a council meeting. Therefore, I'll make a motion to resolution. Or does that need to be done by resolution?
Thank you. I think what you might actually need to be doing is giving instruction to do a review, or maybe you might want to refer this to your Policy and Governance Committee to see how this might impact or reflect what appears in your current council policies, and then bring back a draft council policy change to make this, basically to put this into action. That may be a more appropriate avenue to address the issue.
Great, thank you. I'll make a motion to refer this to the Council and Policy Governance Committee in order to take action to facilitate this change. Mayor Pro Tem?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to refer the idea of having all presentations during our study sessions only to the Council and Policy Governance Committee. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Noble?
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Rogers? Sorry, thank you. Sometimes there are presentations during our council meeting, and of course, there are presentations during our study sessions. When do you decide when there will be a presentation in a council meeting? For example, our next item is a presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Typically, when we make a presentation for items, it's truly in that to help provide clarifying or additional information to support you to be able to make an informed decision, whether that's approval or denial of an item. I think what this clearly delineates for me and the staff is that for items such as education on Metro District's education on noise ordinance or things of that such, we would bring those to a study session to have an initial discussion and feedback for us then to craft an ordinance or a resolution dependent upon the appropriate mechanism. And then we would bring it into a regular meeting. I would say where we deviate a little bit is that if we've come to you all previously in a study session for like Metro Districts, we may not then make a presentation to you all on the night of the hearing, given that we have already gone through that deliberative discussion with you up to that meeting. So you may not get one then and there, but if this is coming to you all, let's per se, a noise ordinance that you all have asked us to go ahead and draft, we would probably do a presentation to you all at that meeting because that may be the first time that you are having that ordinance to be able to get that work done. So there's a little bit of distinction there.
My concern is that study session agendas aren't promoted in the same way that city council agendas are, and that there are some topics that are more appropriate for the community to be aware of than other topics. And to stop all presentations from coming to the city council means that we're using a hatchet when maybe a scalpel would do. Maybe we need instead to limit the amount of time that a presentation uses during the course of an evening. Perhaps that would help.
I hear where you're coming from, ma'am, and I think that's where the city attorney thought by having this go to the policy and governance subcommittee, you all can have a fresh discussion on how you want to look at presentations, the length of presentations, the type of presentations, and/or if there's any other kind of strategic outlay that you may want to have on what goes before a study session and/or regular city council that can then be brought back to the larger body to adopt. So I would say it's probably best to have that conversation in the main at policy and governance to see where it's then crafted going forward.
For example, we have a presentation every first Monday of the month on oil and gas and Suncor emissions. Would you see this motion as eliminating that?
I mean, the city attorney may kick me underneath the table, but I would say, but given that that is a presentation and this would supersede because it's saying schedule all, depending on what comes out of governance and policy, then yes, that would also then shift from the first Monday of the month to the appropriate study session in accordance.
Okay, then I still have transparency issues. The mayor's motion is to facilitate, is for this issue to go before the Policy and Governance Committee to facilitate all presentations being moved to the study sessions. So I will actually have to oppose the motion.
Councilmember Hurst.
Mayor, would you be on board with an amendment to consider the oil and gas presentation a report moving forward? And then I think that would allow us to get past what Councilwoman Noble just brought up, but where that stays, but presentations where we're getting new information instead of like an updated report is what we would be specifically talking about.
No, I'm going to stick with the way that I have this worded. And let's take that oil and gas presentation. Last meeting we had December 6th. It was in our agenda and scheduled to take approximately 15 to 20 minutes, and we spent an hour on it. Now, we have an ordinance out here that says that this evening's meeting is gonna end in 3 hours and 49 minutes and 8 seconds. And whenever they are scheduling items in our agenda to take a certain amount of time, but we're taking 3 times as long in order to accomplish that, that's a presentation that can take place in a study session where we can ask those questions and we can get that dialogue. And, we still continue since the pandemic to televise all of our study sessions. They're all available for the public to watch, so I don't see it as a transparency issue. I don't see it as limiting information being shared. I actually see it as expanding the ability for us to have conversation and discuss the presentation materials without the threat of a deadline out there, because presentations can be spaced out in a manner that they don't get loaded up the way that business and affairs of the city do with public hearings and ordinances and resolutions of that nature. So for that reason, I'm good with leaving it the way that it is. Is there any other discussion? All right, motion and a second to refer moving all presentations to the study sessions to the Council and Policy Governance Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is going to carry 5-2 with 1 excused absence. Now we're going to move on to a presentation. I'll invite John Borgelli, Management Analyst, forward to give the presentation on the South Platte Crossing update.
I'm fine. Just my pride. Dylan, can we share my screen? Oh, is it the...
Oh, yeah, it needs to be on.
Okay.
So you want to do duplicate?
Okay, perfect. All right, good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council. This is an update on the Adams Tower project, providing an update on the project status, requesting additional funds, and outlining the next steps. Some background information for members. This floor of the building at 7190 Colorado Boulevard was initially purchased at Council's direction. Council had expressed a desire to use the space for nonprofits. Staff decided that they needed to determine the number of organizations and people for the space before selecting tenants. That work has been accomplished, and so we then engaged C1 Architecture and Design to design the remodel. Council had approved the initial concepts, and this was initially budgeted for $1.2 million. A project update, the design work is complete. The bid process for the general contractor is also complete. The contract's pending review and will then be brought to council. We're anticipating construction start sometime during Q1 of 2023, with anticipated project completion with that start date sometime during Q2. Staff is also preparing an RFP for tenant selection so we can run those processes in parallel so that we have as little delay as possible between when we actually complete the renovation and when we can start getting nonprofits into that space. Now, the request for additional funds. Initially, this project was budgeted for $1.2 million. This was based on an internal estimate, and this was then approved by council ordinance. Looking at the project now that we have the design work complete and we're looking at bringing a contractor on board, we're looking at about $1.5 million for the project cost. A lot of this is driven due to price increase due to inflation. And so staff is requesting an additional $300,000 in order to complete this project as initially envisioned and as those concepts were approved by council. So option A would be to fully fund this project. This would be approving an additional $300,000. We would bring back an ordinance request that would appropriate this money, and this would allow for the project to be completed consistent with the initial designs. Option B would be to maintain the current funding level of $1.2 million. Staff has engaged the architect and the general contractor in some preliminary value engineering. Some of that is attached to your packet this evening. That would yield savings of approximately $100,000, and we would also be able to realize further savings from AV equipment and also furniture options that we are working on preparing estimates for. But we do have confidence that we can make it work within the current budget. We would have to pare down some of the options. It wouldn't look exactly as the initial plans did, but the project overall would not suffer too much from that as well. So next steps, we will proceed on this remodel based on council's direction. So this evening, we're just looking for a consensus from council whether or not there's willingness to approve that additional funding, which we would then come back with a formal ordinance for, as well as, and then additionally, staff will continue its outreach to the nonprofit community through this RFP process to select tenants. And finally, tenant selection will continue as we get to the construction phase of this project. That was my presentation pending any questions from council.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the presentations. Anybody on council have any questions for Mr. Borgelli? Councilmember Douglas?
Thank you, Mayor Huseman. So, this was initially purchased, the floor was purchased, so it's just basically the airspace in the building, correct? On that floor?
It's currently just vacant office space. There's nothing in it.
Right, but what we purchased was the airspace on that floor.
Correct.
Much like you would purchase a condominium.
It is a condominium. The building is
All right,
once a
so there's no lot block, anything like that. So we've already spent the 1 million, is it 1 million plus?
1 million was the purchase price for the floor, and then an additional $1.2 million was appropriated for the remodel. We're requesting an additional $300,000 to meet our original plan.
All right, so this project could cost us 2.5 million?
In total for capital costs, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And there's not been anything done yet. So is there, have any nonprofits shown an interest in doing something like this? And have they seen the plans as far as what's proposed for dividing up the space and so on and so forth?
Yes, ma'am. We have shared plans with nonprofits in the community. We have had some interest as well, and once we release the RFP, we'll be able to start that process, and those will be reviewed by the Quality Community Foundation.
All right, and will those nonprofits be paying any kind of lease payment?
No, ma'am. It was initially envisioned that this space would be an amenity for them.
Okay, and how will those nonprofits be selected as far as, I mean, that's a pretty sweet deal, being able to have office space for free.
They'll be selected by the Quality Community Foundation. They'll review the applications.
And they will have the guidelines as far as what they have to adhere to in order to stay in the place, and
Exactly.
so it will be very specific so that we don't run into legal problems down the road, which we possibly could if we don't have airtight agreements on something like
Exactly.
that. Okay, and then what happens if, now we bought that from, was it the Land Institute or?
The Urban Land Conservancy, yes, ma'am.
Okay, what happens if they decide to sell that building?
We own a floor. We own the full floor. If they sell the building, we still maintain the floor. They can only sell the parts of the.
And what happens if somebody buys it, but they just want the land and they're gonna tear the building down? What happens to us?
Simply, they can't, because we are still an owner within that building. And given that it's been condominiumized, we still have rights to it. So,
So the whole building has been condominium?
Yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
All right, very good, that's very helpful. Okay, and then we wouldn't necessarily have to do an additional 300,000 to add to the,
No, ma'am. We have prepared some value engineering. We can make this work at the current funding levels. We'll have to strip out some features that we had initially envisioned, but we can still make this project work at the current level.
okay. seeing that we have already put so much money into this, I would really like to see the costs kept down. We put a lot of money into this with very little foresight on how this could turn out. And so anyway, I would like to see it kept to what a minimum could be. What would the quality of the furniture be?
We would just be
Would it be
looking,
IKEA or?
it would still be better than IKEA furniture.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Noble?
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Douglas's questions are important and just shows you how long we've had this on the table, which is November of the year 2000, as that's 2 years now. My understanding was that the Urban Land Conservancy was going to take over renting this out. Did that change?
Per the last time we discussed this with council, the city, since we own the space, will be in charge of tenant selection and then will oversee those agreements with the individual nonprofits who are selected.
I think the one concern that I've had all along was that we were actually dividing up the space. And in my experience running a nonprofit, it's more a case of people working in open areas, if you will. Have we considered build to suit, that we do the basics and then the tenants help us determine what we're going to do with the rest of it, so that we do the hallway, we do the bathrooms, we put in carpet, paint, new windows, whatever the case might be there, but the rest of it waits until we know what kind of tenant is going to take over?
Based on, we went out to the nonprofit communities and we tried to take a survey of what their current office requirements are, and that informed the initial plans. We've tried to keep everything as modular and open as possible. Most of the space is designed with mobile furniture options, so we can move and reconfigure desks as necessary and scale it based on need.
Okay, I think I agree with Councilmember Douglas, so we can do this as minimally as possible, and less is more in some of these spaces as well. So I would also urge us to wait until we actually have people before we start putting up cubicles. If you're doing low cubicles or any of that kind of stuff, wait until you know what kind of nonprofits are coming in.
Thank you, ma'am.
Are there any other questions? How many square feet approximately is this?
Approximately 11,000 square feet, sir.
11,000 square feet? I think the estimate's actually a really good estimate on how much that is, given the current construction prices, especially for the type of space that we're looking to build out. We're squabbling over $300,000, and it's the difference between doing it right or doing it good enough to get by. And we made an investment in this facility, and I feel it's important that we continue on that investment in order to put forth the type of facility that's going to be the best possible. This is a city-owned facility. It's an investment in a city-owned facility. It's not like it's just, giving money and building a facility and letting Adams County run it or something like that. So for that reason, I'm all in favor of bringing forth the ordinance for the additional $300,000 in order to have that forward. Are there, we need to give a consensus to staff on this one, so are there enough people willing to entertain the ordinance going forward? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you have enough people to entertain bringing the ordinance back to us.
Understood, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes items that are routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, or non-controversial. These items are presented to council for a single motion and vote. Any member of council may ask to remove a specific item off the consent agenda for further discussion and a separate vote. Tonight, there are 7 items listed under the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to remove an item off the consent agenda? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd like to remove ordinance 2449.
All right. Councilmember Noble.
I'd like to remove 2022-113.
2022-113.
Correct.
All right. Are there any others? All right, looking for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Hurst.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Will the clerk please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Minutes of the December 12th, 2022 special meeting.
Oh, keep going, you got more.
Ordinance 2432, an ordinance amending the Land Development Code of the City of Commerce City by the comprehensive revision of Article 8, therefore concerning regulations of signs.
Don't read that one. Don't read that one.
Resolution 2022-114, a resolution canceling city council meetings that fall on officially scheduled city holidays. Resolution 2022-118, a resolution granting an easement to 27J School District for construction, operation, maintenance, replacement, enlargement, reconstruction, improvement, inspection, repairs, and removal of fiber optic facilities and all fixtures and devices appurtenances thereto on city property generally located along East 96th Avenue. Resolution 2022-119, a resolution declaring a vacancy on the City Council of the City of Commerce City and designating the application deadline and materials to fill the vacancy. Your vote is open.
All right, consent agenda as amended passes unanimously, 7-0, one excused absence. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem. You pulled ordinance 2449. The floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. I was seeking clarification from staff. I'm a little confused as to what is the term for this agreement, because in the presentation it says through December 31st, 2023, but in council communication, it says 2022 through 2027. So I just want to make sure, is this for a one-year agreement, but why is it in council communication that it could possibly go through 2027?
Ma'am, if I may, the base agreement is asking for an extension through December 31st of 2023. The individual lease agreements that are associated with the master lease agreement expire between 2022 and 2027. So therefore, the base agreement is only being asked to be extended to 2023. But within that base agreement, it states that the individual leases for each specific vehicle will run their due course, which range from expiring in 2022 to 2027.
So then you're saying that we could have the enterprise contracts still up until that time after a year? And it's been, how many years have we had them already?
We're only asking for it to be added, to extend it 1 year. But so that extension to 2023 will allow us, if need requires, for us to enter into additional lease agreements. If it's determined that there are additional vehicles that require leasing, for example, the police patrol vehicles are typically ones that we would lease due to the high turnover rate and the high mileage on that. So we don't want to preclude being able to do that. But generally speaking, after 2023, between now and December of 2023, we'll be completing our analysis of the fleet to make a determination as to how best to redistribute our assets in terms of the combination of leasing vehicles and/or purchasing to own. And then once that expires, that lease agreement in 2023, if we desire to continue to lease vehicles after 2023, we would have to have a subsequent agreement with some lease provider. It may or may not be Enterprise. There may be a case that would be made that it would be in the best interest of the city to put that out for bid.
Well, why does it say 2027 then in council communication?
The 2027 is referring to the individual leases that we have with any particular vehicle. Currently now, we have leases in existence that last either, depending on when they started, whether it's a 3 to 5 year lease, their termination is either in 2022, 2023, 24, 25, 26, or 27. So those leases, those individual leases will still be in place unless jointly the city and Enterprises decides that it's in the best interest of the city to terminate those leases, i.e. to return the vehicles or buy them out, whatever the case may be. But the individual leases span a greater period than the master lease.
Because if I can, I'd like to get clarification from our city attorney, Mr. Haydar, because the way I'm reading it, doesn't it state that it would be with Enterprise? The possibility, and that's my concern. Why not after a year open it up to other bidders and other companies? Because he still didn't answer to how many years have we had Enterprise as well.
So with this particular fleet management lease, there was an amendment that was made in 2017 to have the term of the master lease end at the end of 2022, and that's where we're at. But what's going on here is during the term of that lease, in other words, anytime up until this lease expires, we can enter into an individual vehicle lease that has a 5-year term. In other words, it takes us out through 2027. So the point of this authorization, what's being asked for here, is to authorize simply the expenditure of those funds for next year for vehicles that we've already executed individual lease agreements for. Nothing then precludes the city from doing an RFP, looking at other means of obtaining vehicles, purchasing vehicles, or vehicle leases through another vendor. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but so the end of next year, you're going to offer the bid up to other companies, not just Enterprise?
That is part of the plan. That's part of the research that we're doing. If inevitably we decide it's in the best interest of the city to continue with a lease component for at least a portion of our fleet, that will then be opened up to bids by all vendors.
And you don't know when that will be?
That we anticipate that new contract will be, an RFP will be issued at some point during 2022 to take effect starting on January 1st of 2024, or 2023, pardon me, in the first half or the midpoint of 2023, that when we get the final report, it inevitably will conclude that at least a portion of our fleet should remain leased. And that portion of the fleet, starting in 2024, moving out, that will be subject to a bid, an RFP for all bidders, Enterprise and any other concern that would wish to bid on that service.
And then you still didn't answer my question. How many years did we have Enterprise now already?
It started in 2017. So through 2022, that would be 5 years, and we're asking an extension through 2023, which would add an additional or a 6th year to that base agreement.
Okay, that's just my concerns. because it seems like, once again, that the end possibly next year, we'll be stuck again with another contract for enterprise, and it wasn't opened up to anybody else, so was my concern.
I don't think that that would be the case, ma'am, that if we enter into a new base, pardon me, a new base agreement, we would do that via an RFP to solicit bids for that. The however is, we will still have individual vehicles underneath individual lease agreements with enterprise that could go out until 2027. That at that point, we could make a determination whether we want to buy back that lease, end that lease agreement. There's several different mechanisms that we could use, but that could possibly include those individual vehicles continuing under lease with enterprise till their termination point.
It seems like there's so much uncertainty, because you said you think, and it just doesn't seem, like there's anything for sure that you presented to us, especially since that's in council communication stated like that, so I don't.
Let me ask about these 5-year leases. We leased these vehicles this year for 5 years? And that takes us to 2027, is that what you said?
We have a few vehicles that we are in the process of leasing. They would be the park ranger vehicles. We also have put in an order for, I believe it is 21 patrol vehicles. There's only certain times of the year that they open up the solicitation for you to place those orders. In fact, frankly, the ranger vehicles, we happen to be able to find 3 of them that we're able to lease to meet the requirement. The actual opening for those to be ordered is still several months away. So we were frankly kind of fortunate to be able to get those vehicles under contract. And the 21 vehicles that we have for police patrol vehicles, we were able to order them without a commitment to lease. So we were able actually to place that order without, we could later decline to actually lease those. But as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the police vehicles, considering the high turnover rate, the amount of miles we put on it and the heavy use on them, those will be vehicles that I would anticipate would be the recommendation of our final report to continue to lease those type of vehicles into the future.
Does the money that is being authorized under ordinance 2449 pay for all 5 years of these vehicles?
No, sir. That is just to, the additional money is to raise the threshold for the total amount that we were authorized to spend for this program. So it's just adding additional funds to get us through to the end of 2023.
So you went out, you found 24 vehicles that you want to lease for 5 years. You've executed to say, go ahead and secure these vehicles for us. Then at a later date, you're going to come back to a city council and you're going to say, please approve this money to pay for the vehicle that we executed a lease on.
I would anticipate that the police vehicles would probably be leased for a 3-year period just because of the high turnover on those. Other vehicles we have in the inventory, because of the relatively lesser amount of usage, we would have a 5-year term on them. But yes, sir, we have to pay each year as we go for the lease of those vehicles.
So you're effectively taking the decision-making process away from the city council. And you're forcing their hand to say, you have to approve this money to go towards these vehicles because we leased them. Instead of coming before the city council and saying, we found 21 vehicles that we would like to lease, the cost is going to be this much, will you please approve us going out and leasing the vehicles, and at the same time approving the expenditure of funds, you go out and you lease the vehicles and then come back a year later and say, hey, you got to pay for this. Hey, you got to pay for it. Oh, by the way, you got to pay. Here we sit. We have to enter into an extension on enterprise, even though we may be able to get a better rate from somebody else, but we didn't do an RFP in order to figure out whether or not we could get a better rate. Just extend this for another year. So you continue to force the council's hand to approving your purchases because we backed ourselves up against a deadline of December 19th. Approve it for 2023.
As I mentioned, I think a short while ago, we placed an order, a non-binding order for those 21 police vehicles. We're not obligated to enter into that agreement. We placed that order so that we would have them available to us.
When was that placed?
That was placed about a month, 2 months ago.
2 months ago.
I may have my dates a little bit.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, sir. So to try to keep this as straightforward, obviously with every budget appropriation, we bring forward to you all whether or not those vehicles priced with, I call it additional staffing resources and or requirements and or changeover, we present that to you. So what you have before you today is the agreement of an extension to cover our 2023 budget for the vehicles that were requested during the budget appropriation and to increase that by that dollar amount. If I'm also not mistaken, with respect to the lease agreements that we have and or terms, we can also terminate said lease agreement if we deem it appropriate to actually go with a purchase or if we are no longer working with enterprise and working with a different group. I would say lastly, I think it's also our position that we would come before you all with the analysis of the fleet study to be able to get your feedback and direction on how to look at not just the makeup of our fleet of a lease to own or an own, but also looking at whether or not we also start to make the transition to EV vehicles as requested by this council. So that's how I would say this was meant or is to be presented to you all as one, to cover for what we have requested as an appropriation for the 2023 budget, which you took action on and worked through over the second and third and obviously into the fourth quarter of this year. And then obviously knowing that we will have the opportunity to reevaluate how we look at the broader program comprehensively with you all next year. And then also know that we have the ability to terminate said lease agreements in accordance with upcoming budget appropriations that you all will also be able to weigh in once we have the appropriations identified and can present to you all.
If I may just add one additional point, is that as part of the recommendations from the study, it will also include recommendations as to what we should be doing with the existing leases, whether we should continue with them or terminate them or buy them out. So that will be part of the recommendation. So the money that we're asking for is just for the service of these vehicles in 2023. And once we have that study completed and those recommendations, that will be presented to council for their approval on how we move forward with expenditures for vehicles, whether owned or leasing, in 2024 and beyond.
Councilmember Noble?
Thank you, and I'm glad Mr. Rogers brought up the electric vehicles. But what are we doing in terms of leasing hybrid vehicles?
That is part of the investigation of our study to
It
determine.
isn't something we can do right now as part of the leases that we're taking with Enterprise?
We could, theoretically, we could do that. The vehicles that those 21 vehicles for police patrol, they're not EVs. They're combustion engines for that. The 3 vehicles that we got for the park rangers, they are not as well. That was just an availability meeting a requirement, so we took advantage of that. We currently have 10 vehicles that we have not ordered from the 2022 inventory, as well as 14 in the 2023 inventory that we're investigating what's the best vehicle for that to include EV vehicles as part of that study. So we have put on a hold on the purchase of any of those vehicles, except for the cases of the police department and the park rangers, till we make a determination which type of vehicle is most appropriate to include EV vehicles.
And I would be sure to include hybrids then as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Just in case, but it would be nice if that was part of this right now. Thank you.
Councilmember Douglas?
Thank you. I think I may have figured this out. It's the second paragraph on the council communication So you're asking for an additional 1.2 plus million for the vehicle leasing program, but not to exceed 7.2 in aggregate. So the 1.2 added on to what we have would then add up to the 7.2, is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. Council previously approved up to 5.9 million. We need an additional 1.2 million to take us to the 2.7 million.
Very good.
Rough order of magnitude.
Thank you for answering that.
Any other questions for staff on ordinance 2449? Seeing none, looking for a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2449 by Councilor Seidlin, second and final reading. Councilmember Hurst.
So moved.
Councilmember Ford. I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2449 by Councilor seated on second and final reading. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, will the clerk please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Ordinance 2449, an ordinance authorizing an increase in spending on vehicle leases for the year 2023 as part of the city's master lease program agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management. Your vote is open.
Motion carries 6-1. One excused absence. All right, next up, we have Resolution 2022-113. Councilmember Noble, you pulled this item. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. This is a resolution designating posting locations for ordinances and public meetings. And I was looking at the Granicus traffic reports from 2021 and 2022, and I was struck by the considerable difference between the 2 years. In 2021, there were many instances wherein there were triple-digit looks at Legistar. In 2022, it's been one or two at a time, and I can attest to the fact that one of those ones is oftentimes me. I'm often pulling it up. So I'm wondering where our problem is in that we're not getting the same level of interest in 2022 that we received in 2021, and what, if anything, has affected that this year.
Thank you, Councilmember Noble. I'm not sure I'm the best to speak on it. I know our communications manager, Travis Huntington, is here, and I know his team does a really good job about every council meeting we have. They try and get it out as soon as we publish the agenda. We list the important topics. We have the Zoom link. We update the websites regularly. We've added the QR code flyers at the rec centers. We've got the carousel going on with like the agendas and everything. It's just hard to really find what works, right? Some weeks you've seen based on the topics, right? You get a lot of people signing up. It's a hot topic that people want to come and speak on and watch you all take action on and watch your debate and your discussion with each other. And then there's some weeks where, you know, we only have a few people sign up or nobody sign up. And it just varies week to week depending on what's on the agenda. I don't think, Travis, unless you want to come up here and speak on it, we really have found quite the secret sauce. We're expanding where we can. We're really trying to use, you know, catchy language and graphics with our consultants and everything. But it's just kind of unless you want to say anything differently, Travis, it's just kind of week to week, it kind of varies, right? Some of that traffic is from our website crawler through our vendor whenever we switch over from Granicus streaming hosting to this new nonprofit that we're using on the city's website and have to go through our Legistar site and pull the video, the minutes, and some of that metadata to move it over into their system. So that's where some of the traffic came from, because you'll see in 2021, even more than Commerce City, the top location where people were coming from our website from was from Ashburn instead of Commerce City, and that's the company that was using that website crawler to pull our old Commerce our old Granicus video and metadata into their new system for that. So that's some of the traffic, but Travis, do you want to speak on how you guys are doing your advertising and posting?
Sure. I would say from a promotional standpoint for what we do for city council meetings, I will say there hasn't been any particular reduction in what we've done from 2021 to 2022. If anything, I think we have tried to establish a better frequency for when we're doing those promotions for city council meetings. The link to Legistar is always included in social media posts and the city newsletter, news items that go on the city homepage. And that, so I guess I can't speak specifically to the numbers there, the discrepancy between 21 to 22. I can say the efforts that we have put forth to promote meetings and agendas and that kind of information, I will say, has not changed much in that time, if at all.
Well, it is fascinating. I do think that you do good social media posts. I have no issue with that whatsoever. It's just that the difference in visits is startling between 2021 and 2022. And the other question I have about it, when you talk about the posting locations, is that we have learned on the senior commission that there are many seniors who don't have access to smartphones or computers or that kind of thing anyway, and wouldn't know it was going on. So if there's some way to include a calendar in the Commerce City Connected.
Sure.
Maybe that kind of visual would help, that these things are going on every Monday night, and here's where you can go. Maybe they can go to the library and get the information or something like that. But the drop off was precipitous, and it just caught my attention. And I thought, well, I can't just let that go without asking the question because it was so strange.
Yeah, we can look into, from a website traffic perspective, if there's been much difference to correlate what you're describing from, say, our news items, for example, and how many folks are clicking on those, and see if there is also a correlation between 21 to 22. I would say, in reference to the comment regarding Connected, we do have a list of what we call, on page 2 of every month of Connected, we call what's coming up at council, that sets the stage for the following month. And we do, to the extent possible, obviously, given the print timelines that we're dealing with, we do try to include as many topics as we can that are on the work schedule. Of course, none of the agendas are final, and we make sure to make that clear in there. But we try to tease as much as we can topics, like, for example, right now we're finalizing the January newsletter. So to the extent we're able, we're taking the current work schedule for what's on there for January, and we are putting that in there on page 2 of the Connected to just give folks a little bit of an idea what may be coming down the pike, and then letting them know that that's all subject to change as we get closer to each meeting, but trying to provide those resources to the extent possible in print. So.
Yeah, a lot of text.
What's that?
A lot of text.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, we try to keep the definitions tight and try to keep the language as friendly as we can to hopefully make it understandable.
Right. Okay. Well, and it may have been pandemic related. Maybe people were still working from home and were bored spitless, and next thing you know, they're on Granicus looking up our agenda. That's entirely possible too. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Looking for a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2022-113. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Hurst.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2022-113. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, will the clerk please read the title?
Resolution 2022-113, a resolution designating posting locations for ordinances and public meetings.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2022-113. The title has been read. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0, one excused absence. We're going to move on to public hearings. We have Resolution 2022-03, the Avila Settlers Crossing Subdivision. Tonight's public hearing will be on the Avila Settlers Crossing subdivision, which was continued from the September 19th meeting. I'll remind council of the following. Use the public hearing only to ask questions and gather facts, but not express opinions or indicate how you will vote. Council members are not permitted to provide testimony if you wish to participate in the decision. Rely only on facts developed in this hearing and in the record, and apply those facts to the criteria in the Land Development Code. This time, I'd like to invite Mr. Hayter to address the City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I address council as a whole, I'd actually like to single out Councilmember Kim. Councilmember Kim, I understand, since you're the most recent addition to our city council, and we're not present for, at least we're not on the dais for some of these previous meetings, I understand that you have been able to review the previous public hearings on this matter including those on March 7th of 2022, August 15th of 2022, and September 19th of 2022, and that you are fully advised in the matter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask the following. Is there any council member who cannot hear this matter and make a determination fairly and impartially based on the record and the facts and evidence as developed at the public hearing? Will the record reflect that no member of council has indicated an inability to be fair and impartial? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hayter. At this time, we'll open the public hearing. I'll invite Jennifer Jones, Principal Planner, to provide the presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. This item has come before you a couple of times. I'll be presenting it to you tonight, a Villa Settlers Crossing subdivision plat. It was continued from March 7th, August 15th, and most recently, September 19th. So I just have a brief presentation for you tonight since you have seen this a couple of times. The portion outlined in yellow is the subject property of Villa. It is located at the southeast corner of East 100th Avenue and Tower Road. And you'll see the rest of Settlers Crossing here outlined in other colors, including some approved residential filings, a private park in the middle, as well as a future commercial site at the hard corner of 96th Avenue and Tower Road. So the applicant's request for you tonight, this is Next Metro Communities, and they're requesting approval of their final subdivision plat. This would create one lot for 12.93 acres, one lot for future residential development. Associated with the plat, there is a corresponding PUD permit that's under review administratively. And just as a reminder, the subdivision plat itself, it just establishes those lot lines, so one lot for future utilities, infrastructure, that type of thing. It does not change the allowable uses, the zoning, the density, or anything that is set forth in the existing PUD zone document. So this, I know this one is a little bit hard to see, but this is a copy of the plat. North is over here on the left side of your screen. That would be 100th Avenue, and you have one lot outlined here for those over 12 acres. And then just to remind you all of the public hearings that this project has been through, this project was presented to your Planning Commission in February. The Planning Commission voted 3-2 to recommend denial to City Council based on criteria G, what Planning Commission outlined as adequate and sufficient public safety. The City Council, you all heard this item back in March. It was heard again in August. Continued both of those times and continued again in September. Therefore, we are here tonight. Again, my presentation is quite brief, but staff is available to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is also here to present to you all tonight and answer any questions you have.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, does anybody on council have any questions for staff? Councilmember Kim.
Thank you for the presentation. So I'm just looking over the city staff report regarding the 9 criterias. And I gotta say, I mean, I'm looking at, give me 1 second, I gotta find it again. Says this criterion E, I think I could just use as an example. The subdivision complies with all applicable city standards and does not necessarily create lots or patterns or lots that make compliance with such standards difficult or infeasible. The analysis says the subdivision plat complies with the requirements and standards for lot design from the LDC and PUD zone document. The lot layout will ensure compliance with development standards. As a single lot, the subdivision plan achieves maximum flexibility to facilitate future development. I think just some of the wording on here, as far as what the analysis done, not just for this criteria, but several others too, it doesn't really go into detail. Doesn't really give us a...
Need you to ask questions, not testify.
Sorry. My apologies. No other questions then at this time.
Councilmember Noble.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I am looking at the PUD, and I am curious, what is the lot coverage for this project now that it is attached multifamily, correct?
The proposal for the development is actually single-family attached. Similar, basically a duplex product.
Okay, so what is the maximum, what is the lot coverage?
I do have that, if you'll give me just one, I don't wanna quote it wrong for you. I recall, because I did look at this earlier today, I want to say the maximum is in the 60s in percentages, and this is in the 20s. Lot coverage.
This project is in the 20% range?
I believe it's in the 20% range. I don't see that exactly in front of me at the moment.
Okay, and what about setbacks? So the setback from Tower Road, for example, I only see arterial and collector. Is Tower Road an arterial or
Yes, ma'am.
collector? It's
Tower
an
Road's
arterial.
an arterial, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the setback from Tower Road?
The minimum setback for all structures from arterial roads would be 20 feet for single-family attached in parcel A.
Correct. And what is this project?
I don't have the PUD permit in front of me because it is not, I do have it in front of me, actually. However, it's not approved as a part of the plat, but I can certainly get that for you.
I'm looking at the Settlers Crossing PUD document that was in our package.
Yes, ma'am. And your question is, what will the setback, the closest setback be to Tower Road on the proposed PUD permit? Is that correct?
For this project, correct.
Well, let's see. I can tell you that it will certainly meet the standard. Oh, yes, ma'am. I also have the lot coverage for you. Here, it is on the proposed PUD development permit as well, in terms of each type of amenity on the site, buildings, landscaping, etc. So, I mean, obviously, there's many pages I could look at all the buildings for you, but I can tell you that in order for the PUD permit to be approved, it would have to meet that standard that's in the PUD zone document. And the PUD permit would not be approved unless the plat is approved. It has to have an approved lot.
I appreciate you taking that position, but I am representing Ward 4, and I have seen where that wasn't the case. So I'm asking, what is the setback from Tower Road?
I just need to get to the proper page. This is not showing setbacks. Let's see. According to sheet 2, the plans do illustrate the 20-foot building setback as well as fence setbacks, et cetera, so it looks like 20 feet per the standard.
Would that be 20 feet from the street to the fence or 20 feet from the street to the building?
It's from the property line, so it is not from the actual asphalt pavement, it's from the property line.
Okay, so it is 20 feet then?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty, good. Okay, and did we have a visual that you could put up of the general layout of the lots, roads, driveways, et cetera?
Yes, ma'am. The applicant's presentation also has a variety of those that I think they would like to present to you as well.
Okay, wonderful. And I guess that answers my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff at this time? right, Ms. Jones, could you do me a favor and go back to the slide that has the PUD document?
Are you referring to this slide,
Nope.
Mr. Mayor?
Keep going, please.
I don't have the full PUD zone document in this presentation.
So I am on slide 17 of the presentation.
I have a
Actually,
longer
slide
presentation I
7.
can pull up if you would like.
I have slide 7 of 15.
This is an abbreviated presentation, but I can pull up a longer one if you'd like to see something different.
That'd be great, thank you.
Okay.
Yep, oh, there you were.
Oh,
There we go.
okay.
The parcel in question, can you verify for me, please, is parcel A,
That's correct.
designated as mixed use?
That's correct.
There's a chart over on the right that lists parcel A and has a description of uses. Could you please read that description of uses for me?
Yes, sir. Mixed use includes commercial, office, multifamily residential, single-family attached residential at 8 to 24 dwelling units per acre.
All right, thank you. If you go back, I believe there was a previous slide that you had that had land use maps. I believe,
From the comprehensive plan?
yes, thank you. Current zoning, Settlers Crossing PUD, could you read that for me, please?
The zoning is the Settlers Crossing PUD, and the future land use plan designation is mixed use.
And so both of those, current and future land use is mixed use, including residential, is that correct?
The
Is that how I'm reading this?
the
Both-
future
bo-
land use designation is mixed use corridor commercial, correct? And the zoning is the Settlers Crossing PUD, yes. And we read the allowable, some of the allowable uses.
Very good, thank you. Is there anything in this parcel A that is being requested as part of this application that is actually mixed use?
There is no commercial in parcel A, if that is the question. The applicant is proposing single-family attached residential, correct?
So a single use is all that is being requested,
That's correct.
not mixed use?
That's correct.
Thank you very much, appreciate those answers. Anybody else on council have any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'd like to invite the applicant forward to give your presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First off, I'd like to thank you all for your time tonight and your consideration. And we'll get right to it, out of respect for that time. I guess, first off, my name is Grayson Conkle. I'm with Next Metro Communities. The rest of our team here will get into some of the plat criteria and some of the other stuff that we were just talking about, but I will just give us a brief overview of what this community will look like and why we believe it's important to complete here. This project will be comprised of single-story homes that you can see in the top left picture there, as well as resort-style amenities throughout the community like swimming pool, barbecue, fire pit, and open space throughout. Currently, there exists a gap in the housing market that's often referred to as the missing middle. And for years, what's been built is either for sale, single-family homes, or for rent apartment buildings. There's this idea that there's been this missing housing type that hasn't been built for quite some time. And that's what we're seeking, is to fill that gap in the housing market, try to create more housing diversity, try to give people another option on how they want to live their lives, whether single-family homes don't necessarily fit with their lifestyle or apartments don't necessarily fit with their lifestyle. We're trying to bring the best components of both of those into one community so that it really appeals to a lot of people that don't have those needs being met right now. So we're trying to take the best qualities from both these existing types of housing. And a lot of those qualities are privacy, flexibility, attainable quality, and maintenance-free living. And as you see here, every unit has a private entrance, resort-style amenities that I touched on. Every unit, every home has its own private backyard, private patio, modern, bright finishes, utilizing a lot of windows, so that you really get the feel like you're living in a home, but you get a lot of the positives that come with living in a traditional apartment building, like maintenance. You don't have to mow your own lawn. You get these resort-style amenities. So really combining a lot of the components of both of these worlds that exist to try to fill this gap that that we refer to as the missing middle, and provide better diversity in housing options for people to choose from. At a time when homeownership affordability is at an all-time low, I think it's especially important that people have more options to fit the lifestyle and the way they want to live. If you look at the chart that we have on the right side here, this is kind of a breakdown, and there's a lot going on this chart, but I think that kind of tells a story in of itself. This is a breakdown of the residents in our Colorado communities by occupation. And what you see is it is all over the place. And I think the story that tells is this type of living is unique. These communities are unique. And it really appeals to not one group of people, not one demographic of people, but people from all walks of life that are kind of searching for a unique community that isn't really being met in the market right now. If you look at the chart on the left, similar idea, but we broke down the composition of our residents by age. And what we found was it's pretty evenly broken out, a third, between aging in place, mid-age transition, and young professionals. And what the aging in place is, these are people that have been homeowners in the past, are looking to downsize, looking to simplify, don't want to deal with the maintenance of home ownership anymore. And as these people start to move into our communities, that also alleviates some of the pressure on the for-sale market, because you're adding for-sale inventory back into the market as these people are moving into our rental homes. So you're at the same time providing a home that these people want to live in. You're also reducing some of the supply constraint that exists in the market right now that we're all familiar with. Mid-age transition, there's a lot of people transferring for jobs, maybe waiting for a home to get built. Maybe have gone through some sort of personal change in their life where it's not a right time to buy a home. Maybe they're only doing a short-term stint at a hospital for a year or something, and they need to be ready to move, so they don't want to be tied to a 30-year note. There's a lot of that, and then a lot of young professionals that are saving up for the opportunity to buy their first home. And as we know, the macroeconomic factors involved in this right now, it's even more imperative that we have other options for people to live in while you're saving up, while you're waiting for rates to come down. You don't necessarily want to be in an urban infill apartment. You want to have a space that's your own. That's where our community comes in. That's why we think it's important. So I think we meet a need for a lot of different people and a lot of different groups that isn't being met right now. So just I'll kind of summarize my thoughts and hand it off to the other guys here. But I think there's a lot of community benefits that this community will bring, not only to our residents, but to the Commerce City as a whole. Expanding housing diversity, which we talked about, supporting future commercial land use. We briefly saw it up there, and we'll get into it a little bit deeper in here, but there's the commercial parcel directly to the south of the parcel we're talking about right now. Once this community is built, hopefully, we'll be adding, obviously, rooftops directly next to that parcel. We'll be adding potential customers right across the street. It'll make that a much more appealing place for commercial users to come in and develop and operate. So it'll add to that use in the employment base. It'll expand park and rec opportunities, not only through the fees that we're paying, but also with the park and rec opportunities that will be within our parcel and within our community. Demonstrates a well-planned out integrated neighborhood that ties into the rest of Settlers Crossing and Commerce City as a whole. Supports sustainable growth, and it also expands the existing pedestrian infrastructure, as well as adding some more involved in some of the off-site improvements along Tower Road, and adding some intersection improvements along Tower there as well. So with that, I'll hand it off to the rest of the team, but thank you all for your time.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name's Ty Robbins with Norris Design, representing Next Metro Communities on this application. And just wanted to quickly recap some of the areas of concerns, what we've heard throughout this process. One, the land use classification, which now we are being classified as single-family attached. The mixed-use designation and the lack of commercial component within this parcel. There were concerns related to traffic and access, park, open space, and recreational opportunities, school impacts and the cash and lieu contributions, and finally walkability and pedestrian safety. So we'll touch on each of these briefly and demonstrate steps that we have taken to address these issues. First, just wanted to show the overall citywide future land use plan. This is contained within the comprehensive plan, and just to give context to this map and see the scope and the breadth of this document and help understand the citywide scale, recognizing that this is intended to be viewed generally and as a framework to inform land use decisions. In fact, the comp plan itself states multiple times that this map is to be used as a guiding document, not intended to be viewed at an individual parcel level scale, rather zoning controls on a much more specific and parcel by parcel basis. So turning now to the zoning issue, and we'll touch again on the mixed use designation later in this presentation. This parcel, as has been mentioned, is part of the Settlers Crossing planned unit development. That encompasses approximately 163 acres of land at the northeast corner of 96th and Tower. And our parcel comprises about 13 acres of this overall area. And this document was approved in 2010, which preserves the immediate corner of 96th and Tower for commercial uses and facilitates various uses on the remaining parcels. The subject property, parcel A, again, is designated as mixed use, which allows for a range of uses within this parcel, but does not mandate a mix of uses within this 12.8 acre parcel A. Furthermore, SFA residential uses are identified as a permitted use by right in the Settlers Crossing PUD zoning document. So we have revised our plan in light of this discussion regarding the land use definition, so that has been resolved. And therefore, we are fully compliant with the comp plan, and again, a few additional details on this later in the presentation. Turning our focus now to the site plan. Again, 12.8 acres of the land is currently vacant. We are proposing 130 single-family attached units. Previously, it was 132, and this amounts for a density of 10.1 dwelling units per acre. And this generally reflects the same layout that was presented previously. The most notable change, instead of a mix of housing types within this parcel that previously consisted of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units that was attached and detached, this layout reflects all duplex homes. These are 2 and 3 bedroom duplex homes to fit within that SFA definition. There is a very high level of pedestrian connectivity throughout this community. Each home fronts on sidewalks that connect throughout the neighborhood, as well as to the surrounding public roadways and to other neighborhoods, including connections to the future commercial uses just south of this property. There's substantial on-site open space and recreational amenities proposed. Parking exceeds minimum required by the PUD. To answer a couple of Councilmember Noble's questions from earlier, there is a 20-foot setback from Tower Road that's to the building. That does comply with the Settlers Crossing PUD zoning document. Building coverage is 25%, and overall landscaping and open space is just over 50%. So just over 50% of the site is landscaping, open space, and amenities. So just in sum, the site plan does meet or exceed all the requirements that are set forth in the Settlers Crossing PUD. There are 2 primary access points from Tower Road that serves the broader Settlers Crossing community. There will be a future signalization at Tower and 100th that will of course meet all of the city's standards and specifications, including pedestrian crossings. Additionally, the Settlers Lane intersection will be improved through a curb cut that will allow for expanded access and signalization instead of the right-in, right-out condition that it is in currently. So overall, this will improve vehicle flow and overall access and circulation within and around the Settlers Crossing development, as well as at the intersection of 96 and Tower. Continuing on with access and circulation, access and internal circulation was analyzed through multiple rounds of staff review. That includes a thorough technical review by Public Works and the South Adams County Fire Protection District for compliance with all regulations, standards, and specifications. So the 2 points of access from Argonne Street, which is a local street into this development, is in compliance with code and actually required by code. The code states that access is to be taken from the lowest functionally classified street possible, in this case being the local street. The South Adams County Fire Department reviewed and confirmed the plat as proposed does comply with all fire safety requirements. That includes points of access, internal circulation, roadway widths, and other technical details. The homes will also be sprinklered with an approved sprinkler system, thereby adding to the overall safety of the community. It's also worth noting the fire impact fees were higher as a result of our land use definition being SFA. So this development will be contributing significantly more dollars to the South Adams County Fire Department. Finally, a traffic conformance letter has been submitted and accepted by the city. And this demonstrates that the proposed improvements are fully compliant and the existing and proposed roadway and circulation network are adequate to serve the development. Of course, this is all backed by sound engineering and professional technical analysis and review. And then touching briefly on school impacts, since our initial city council hearing back in March, we've worked extensively with the 27J school district. First, the cash in lieu fee has been updated based on our new land use designation. And because of this use classification, our per unit fee is higher. Secondly, we've entered into an agreement with the district to contribute to the Voluntary Capital Facility Fee Foundation. That agreement is in place and the dollar amounts are reflected here on the screen. So total contribution is $211,814, up from the prior contribution of just over $52,000. So we do believe that any impacts resulting from this development and the additional students generated are more than mitigated through these agreements and through these contributions. I'll now turn it over to my colleague Jared Carlin, principal with Norris Design. He'll speak to the parks and open space concerns and provide a little more information pertaining to the on-site and off-site recreational amenities.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I'll try to be brief. The park that's shown on this screen is the Settlers Crossing Neighborhood Park. It's about a 2 or 3 minute walk from our site that's shown in yellow right down the street. It's 4.2 acres and it's centrally located within Settlers Crossing for an ease of access for all the residents within the community. It is completed in use today, like I said. The park is in addition to the on-site amenities that we're gonna have within the Avila project. And in addition to that, we're gonna be, with the park and plus the on-site amenities, we're also gonna be contributing a cash in lieu amount of a little over $185,000 to the city that can be used towards any existing or proposed park project as determined by the city. These are some of the on-site recreational amenities. These particular ones are at the northeast part of the site. And again, they're in addition to that wonderful park in the middle of Settlers Crossing and the cash and lieu fees. In this particular area, there will be a pool, leasing center, seating, lounge areas, grills, shade structures, etc. This image is one of the more centrally located amenity area with seating, benches, a shade trellis, landscaping, etc. It provides a strong east-west connection to Tower Road, as well as ease of access for future residents to recreate and socialize. It also gives a good representation of the proposed homes with the high-quality architecture and materials that support the landscape and contribute to cohesive and unified development. We also wanted to show you this rendering. This is from Tower Road looking east, kind of southeast, across Tower Road toward the Avila community. And this kind of shows and highlights the low impact nature of the community. As you can see, there's low profile buildings, no home extends more than 20 feet in height. And no, the only exception with that is the leasing center, which is 25 feet tall and it's more centrally located and not along Tower Road. It's also worth noting that the maximum building height is 45 feet per the zoning PD regulations, so obviously well below that. You can also see that there's a median in Tower Road, as well as ample landscaping in the right-of-way areas on either side with detached sidewalks and tree lawns. And we're proposing a high-quality fence to increase the visual screening and buffering, preserving an attractive corridor along Tower. Then finally, before I turn it over to Charlie to wrap things up, this chart, as you can see, we exceed all the requirements in all areas: density, parking, setbacks, landscaping, park and open space, school impact fees that I talked about, building height and architecture. The Avila Settlers Crossing meets traffic, access, and utility requirements. It's low impact, especially when you compare it to what could be built on the site and on the property. As was touched on briefly, it serves the city in a really unique way, providing high-quality rental option for the residents of Commerce City that doesn't exist in a lot of cases throughout the Front Range. And we've met procedural requirements every step of the way over the last 2.5 years plus, working with the staff through multiple rounds of review, outside agencies, and in particular considering that normally plats like this are typically handled administratively. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Charlie to wrap things up. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Smith. I'm an attorney at Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, and Schreck. I represent the applicant, Next Metro Communities. As you can see, there's quite a few criteria for approval of a final plat in Commerce City. These are largely technical criteria that apply to site design and other aspects of a final plat that are typically reviewed by subject matter experts at a staff level, such as circulation or open space requirements. A voluminous amount of information has been provided to the city to demonstrate compliance with these technical criteria for approval. And as indicated in the staff report, staff has found that the final plat does in fact satisfy each of these criteria for approval. But we're here tonight before you because you have the ability to make your own decision, and we would love to answer any questions you have about any particular criteria for approval, if you have any concerns or questions about any specific criteria. We did hear feedback in previous sessions with council that there were some concerns expressed about criteria A and B, which are in general consistency with the underlying zoning comprehensive plan, and in this case, PUD. The first concern was that the proposed use was being incorrectly categorized as multifamily rather than single family attached. And the second concern was that the proposed use is not in fact mixed use or wouldn't further the intent of the comp plan and current zoning under the PUD. So we'd just like to address those one at a time. With respect to the use classification, Settlers Crossing PUD allows for multifamily residential uses. It also allows for single-family attached residential uses, both by right. If you look at the use chart on the right of this slide, it's copied directly from the Settlers Crossing PUD, and the little R indicates that a use is allowed by right under the Settlers Crossing PUD, and both multifamily dwelling and single-family attached dwelling are allowed by right under the current zoning, under the PUD. But council's concern was that it was a bit confusing, or maybe the wrong use designation to call this project multifamily residential, that rather it was more appropriately designated as some sort of single-family project. And so we've worked with staff. Next Metro has redesigned many of the units, as you heard before, to now all be single-family attached units, duplex units, and that has changed the unit count from 92 detached units with 40 attached, which would be 132 total, to 130 total units, so 2 fewer units, and they are all attached. So whether or not it was correctly classified as multifamily in the beginning, it has now been redesigned to constitute a single-family attached use, which again is expressly allowed by right under the PUD. One of the impacts of that is an increase in the fees that are paid and donated to the school district. The fees increased by approximately $160,000, which is a nice result for the school district, being able to help contribute and offset the impact of the project. The second topic is whether this project would fulfill the mixed-use intent under the Settlers Crossing PUD and the comp plan. There's a lot of information on this slide, but I do think it helps to step back a bit and ask, well, what is mixed use? How is it defined? So the code has a definition of mixed use. The Land Development Code has one. And it's a single building containing more than one principal permitted land use, or a single development of more than one building containing more than one principal permitted land use. The Settlers Crossing PUD is a mixed-use community. That's what the intent of the PUD was to create, with a mix of uses across a bunch of properties. And it says, quote, "It is envisioned that the Settlers Crossing will encompass a variety of uses ranging from commercial to mixed use to multifamily to single-family detached." For this Settlers Crossing PUD, development is defined as the entire area that encompasses the PUD zone document, so all of Settlers Crossing. So when we're looking at the PUD and trying to figure out what mixed use means as applied to the Settlers Crossing PUD, we have to consider that there will be a mix of uses throughout the entire development. That was the intent. There are certain properties that are labeled for different types of mixes of uses, indicating that a different mix of uses could happen on those different parcels. And this is a pretty common approach to mixed-use development. You would often see a very large area with the intent that it be developed for a large mix of uses. This could mean a vertical mix of uses, where you might see retail on the first floor with residential or office uses above it. But it often means a horizontal mix of uses, where one parcel would have a retail store and the next parcel would have a residential or office or something else. And that's the case with the Settlers Crossing PUD. Stepping back to look at this same picture from the comprehensive plan's future land use map that Ty showed earlier, this property is labeled as mixed-use corridor commercial. It specifically describes horizontal or vertical mixed uses being allowed on this parcel. And it says that residential, retail, and other uses may be allowed as part of a horizontal or mixed-use project. They are not required, they are allowed on a property. This is also the city's interpretation of its code of mixed use, of the definition of a mixed-use development, which you can see from the staff report. The staff report says, on page 6, talking about the Settlers Crossing PUD, the Settlers Crossing PUD identifies this area for mixed use that allows for both residential and non-residential uses without prescribing a preferred percentage, ratio, or format for the mix of uses. Although it allows for a variety of uses, it does not require a variety of uses. This is often what you would see in a mixed-use development. The intent is to let the market decide what is appropriate on any individual parcel. Some parcels it might be great to have a mix of uses within that one parcel. Other parcels, because of topography or shape of the parcel or just market conditions, it wouldn't be appropriate. And if you look at the map, there's quite a lot of area within the city that is designated on the future land use map for one type of mixed use or another. That doesn't mean that every single one of those parcels has to have multiple types of uses on the parcel. That would be possibly impossible, given this, many of these parcels may be too small to support more than one type of use. Many of these parcels may not be in the best location from an access perspective to support retail uses or something else. It just means that you are allowed to have one or more types of uses on that property. This differentiates a parcel that's zoned for mixed use or designated for mixed use as compared to one that is designated for industrial or commercial use. If it's designated for industrial use, you can only have industrial buildings on that parcel. You can't have retail, you can't have residential, you can't have a mix of uses. If it's designated for mixed use, you could have maybe an office building and residential, maybe residential and retail. That's the intent of a mixed use designation like this one. In other cities, it can be different. Mixed use can mean that you are required to have a mix of uses on any given parcel. But in Commerce City, that's not what mixed use means here. And that's been the city's policy and how it implements mixed use for many years, as indicated by staff's analysis of mixed use in the staff report. So again, mixed use under the PUD includes commercial. These are the permitted uses in mixed use in the Settlers Crossing PUD. Includes commercial, multifamily residential, and single-family attached residential at 8 to 24 units an acre. City's policy has always been that this allows for a mix of uses, but it does not require a mix of uses within that parcel. The idea, again, is to allow for a wider range of possible outcomes on any parcel than just commercial or just industrial or just residential. Nothing in the code, if you read through the whole code, would require any kind of mix of uses or specific ratio or type of uses on a mixed-use parcel. And this is also supported by the fact that the city may still be considering, I know it at least recently was considering updates to the code that would specifically require a mix of uses or a ratio of uses. That those requirements don't exist now just speaks to the fact that that was not the intent of the code at that time, or the Settlers Crossing PUD when it was approved. There's further evidence in the Settlers Crossing PUD to support the project. One piece of evidence would be that single-family attached is intended to be a buffer use. So where it's located along Tower Road, single-family attached being a more dense type of residential use offers a buffering opportunity between Tower Road and the less dense residential uses on the interior of Settlers Crossing. Notice in contrast that the blue parcel there, parcel B, is designated for commercial mixed use, which does not allow for residential uses. And that's on the hard corner of Tower and East 96, much better positioned for commercial uses such as Starbucks or restaurants or a grocery store or something like that. It's also 33 acres, about 33 acres, so many more opportunities there for potential commercial uses in the future. So what is being decided tonight? You all know this. It's applying the technical criteria for approval of a final plat to the proposed final plat for Villa Settlers Crossing. The proposed use is allowed by right under the Settlers Crossing PUD. And so whether this particular use is perhaps your preferred use that you'd want to see at this property isn't necessarily an appropriate consideration tonight. The uses were determined on the Settlers Crossing PUD when it was approved in 2009. Those uses are set, and this is one of the proposed, or this is rather one of the uses that is permitted by right under the Settlers Crossing PUD. Nothing in the code requires a mix of uses, as we've discussed. Mixed use in the Settlers Crossing PUD is analyzed and evaluated on a development-wide basis, considering all of Settlers Crossing. And there's many of opportunities within the rest of Settlers Crossing to establish a mix of uses, namely on parcel B, the 33-acre commercial property to our south. And so in conclusion, The final plat satisfies all criteria for approval under the code. We have addressed council's concerns regarding the proper use designation, whether it being multifamily residential, it's now single-family attached is the use designation that's been assigned by staff, and the project was redesigned to accommodate that. And single-family attached is allowed by right under the Settlers Crossing PUD. The final plat satisfies the mixed-use intent of the Settlers Crossing PUD and comp plan. As you heard earlier, traffic and circulation is compliant in all areas, as was confirmed by the city staff. One benefit of changing to single-family attached designation is the increase of about $160,000 to the school district. And, excuse me, the final plat provides all required parks, open space, and recreational amenities, as well as a fee in lieu. We're all happy to answer any questions you have tonight. I greatly appreciate your time and patience in this whole process. Welcome to Councilmember Kim. I appreciate reviewing all the previous materials. And thank you for your time. We ask for approval of the Settlers Crossing final plat. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that presentation. Councilmember Hurst, you had a question?
Yeah, this went back to the first presenter. I just was interested in your data because you presented it on the screen. I was wondering, it says Colorado Avila communities is where you're getting the data. I know you have a community in Brighton and a community in Thornton. Could you highlight any other locations and then maybe talk about that data and kind of any feedback you're getting from the current communities?
So we've done 3 communities in Colorado to date. Brighton, Thornton, Thornton at the East Lake Center, and then Buffalo Run. So the data that I was using there was just demographics that we collect from our residents that they provide. So that is specific to this area. I have that. I'd be happy to go over it any time with you. I don't have the full set with me right now, but if there's anything else you have questions on, I'd be happy to go over it with you.
Actually, that answers my question perfectly. I just wanted to make sure it was just the 3 locations that I was familiar with and you weren't getting data from like all over northern Colorado.
No, sir. Just those 3.
Thank you.
Councilmember Noble.
Thank you, and this is for whomever is the one to answer. In a previous presentation, you were providing $185,114 as a fee in lieu for parks. Is that still part of your plan? I didn't hear that.
Yes, and all of our fees have been, originally all of our fees for the schools, for the parks, every fee that we had associated with this project was calculated off the multifamily designation that we were originally under. So we are still paying those fees, but it's all been recalculated off the single family attached based on our units. So we are paying the associated fees with our project, all those different buckets. Just right now, they're being calculated off single family attached, which typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, will be more than it was previously calculated under the multifamily. But I don't know the number off the top of my head. I'll have to check it. But whatever that calculation is, based on that single family attached, we are paying.
Okay, thank you. And what is the setback of your structures from 100th Street, is it?
You got that on there? Thank you.
Can pull the plan up here if you give me just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's also 20 feet to 100th.
Okay, and what about Settlers Crossing? I guess it's Settlers Crossing at the south end? I think
Yeah,
it's
Settlers Lane.
Settlers Lane, okay.
I'll have to do a quick scale on the plan if you give me just a moment.
Sure.
Who would have thought you need to bring a scale?
It's about 25 feet.
Okay. And the drawing does not depict those setbacks as they do on the Tower Road side.
The sheet that I'm looking at doesn't have that particular setback shown.
But it will be 20 feet because the PUD calls for a 20-foot setback from collector roads as well. I
Right,
mean, collector and arterial.
It'll meet the setback, whatever is stipulated in the zoning document.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Douglas.
Thank you, Mayor Huisman. I don't know who wants to answer this, but the parking was mentioned as meeting the minimum requirements. Can you tell me what those are? And then also, there was a sprinkler system that was mentioned, if you could explain that as well.
So parking, there's 260 spaces required, and we are proposing 275 spaces, with half of those being covered spaces. And I'm sorry, your second question had to do with?
Oh, so there are no like attached garages or anything like that? It's just spaces, and some of them being covered?
There's 50% covered parking in their proposal. Half of those are garages and half of those are carports. And then the other half are surface parking spaces.
Okay, thank you. And then, yeah, the sprinkler system that I heard mentioned, could you explain that?
Oh, I think I had mentioned that the homes are sprinklered on the inside with an approved sprinkler system.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for for the applicant? Councilmember Noble?
Is this the same as in Buffalo Run, which is market rent as opposed to for sale?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. So these will be,
Market rent, for rent, with no intention of ever selling off individual units or anything like that. So these are for rent.
Thank you.
Okay, I do have some questions regarding some of the slides that we had towards the latter part. So if the attorney from Farber, Hyatt, and Schreck can please come forward. If we can get the slideshow back up, please. And let's go ahead and start rolling backwards.
You tell me when.
Keep going. One more, I think. Here we go. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I interpreted your presentation is that it's your assertion that the entire Settlers Crossing area is mixed use. And that is how the PUD is set up, and therefore this particular parcel A does not have to be mixed use because the entire entity of Settlers Crossing is mixed use. Is that what you conveyed to us?
No, not quite.
Okay, could you correct me then, please?
So the intent of the Settlers Crossing PUD is to create a mixed-use development-wide. That does not mean that every parcel would have been appropriate for mixed use. There are some parcels that are designated only for residential uses. Others are designated for a mixed use, meaning that you can have a mix of uses or any one of the uses on those parcels. It was the city council's decision at the time they approved that PUD in 2009 or 10, that, you know, clearly, just for instance, one of the internal parcels that's designated residential wouldn't be much good for retail use that needs to front arterial streets and such, right? So those are clearly residential. The mixed-use parcels could be good for retail use, but the market would decide that. It's one of the available uses on a mixed-use parcel.
All right, and so this second line, second section for Settlers Crossing PUD is a mixed-use community. That's why I was saying that you were trying to assert that the whole Settlers Crossing is a mixed-use community. But the second line here says it's envisioned that Settlers Crossing will encompass a variety of uses ranging from commercial to mixed use to multifamily to single-family detached. And so if you go forward 2 slides for me, I think will get me to the image that I want to look at. One more maybe? Ah, there we go. So in this little Settlers Crossing map that we have here, parcel A mixed use, parcel B commercial, parcel C mixed use, parcel E mixed use, parcel D mixed use, and parcel F residential. And then I look at the highlighted part up here and I say, and single family attached to transition to the existing and proposed single family detached, allowing neighborhood retail, multifamily, and single family attached to transition to the existing and proposed single family detached residential areas. Neighborhood retail, mixed use, neighborhood retail, I'm not seeing, so help me to understand why it is that this parcel meets current zoning whenever current zoning is mixed use. And you even quoted our land development code that says the purpose of the mixed-use district is to create an environment having urban characteristics with a relatively small area of land through the close proximity of activities and increased social and cultural opportunities. The uses within this district are primarily commercial in nature, and the residential development is incorporated into the retail environment, such as first-floor retail and second-floor residential. And you quoted that on a previous page. I think it was probably the first page that we were just talking about. This is the purpose intent out of our land development code. The PUD for Settlers Crossing said, we're gonna have some commercial space, we're gonna have some mixed-use space, we're gonna have some straight residential space. I think you even at one point said from commercial to mixed use to multifamily to single-family detached. So how is it that only having multifamily attached housing in here meets the intent of the PUD zoning document?
So a mix of uses, well, let's go to this map, right, that we're looking at here on the slide. You can see the largest parcel, F, is all residential, right? You clearly could not have retail or any other types of uses on there except for residential. As you get further away from that, DA, our parcel A, they're mixed use. You can have a variety of uses on those parcels. The PUD does not say you have to have them, or at least 30% of the parcel has to be commercial, retail, office, something. It says you can have a mix of uses. And then if we look at this land use type orientation quote on this same slide here, it says that the intent of these parcels that are more proximate to Tower Road or East 96th Avenue would be to serve as a buffer to the single-family detached residential uses at the interior of the project. And it lists single-family attached as one of the uses that you could have on these outer parcels that would satisfy that buffering intent, because single-family attached is a denser, more appropriate buffering use directly off a road than single-family detached would be. So it's one of the allowed uses you can have under the PUD in a mixed-use parcel. It would also satisfy the intent of this idea of buffering. And it doesn't preclude commercial uses anywhere else in the project, primarily on this large parcel B. But you could have them, or could have had them, for the undeveloped parcels, you could have them anywhere else as well. Again, it's not requiring any particular use on a property. It's saying that the uses that are permitted on a property are as follows, and we have selected, or Next Metro has selected, one of the permitted uses.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I'm looking right here on this slide, and you've covered up some other text with this screen capture that says land use type / orientation. And the first 4 words says a mix of uses. So you've come to me and you've given me this presentation and you've asked me to consider all the information here in support of your decision. And the right here is this screen capture that you've done on land use type and orientation for this particular parcel. And it says a mix of uses. Do you have a mix of uses?
No, but you're not required to have a mix of uses in any single parcel. The intent of is a mix of uses around the perimeter of this to the west and south will serve as the buffer.
Okay, we're gonna agree to disagree on that. Because I look at this from your testimony of why it is that we should approve this, and it says a mix of uses. Next question I have deals with the square footage. How many square feet are these units typically?
That'd probably better be answered, or be better answered by one of you all. How many square feet are the units? While they're gathering that, I guess. The only other point I would say about that, Mr. Mayor, is that the interpretation we're proffering is not creative or new. It is the city's interpretation of how mixed use works, as well as staff's interpretation of how mixed use works according to the staff report, where they determined that any single use that is permitted in a mixed use zone designation would be allowed. It's not a requirement to have multiple uses. You guys have it. Thank you for that.
So the 2-bedroom units, 980.61 square feet. 3-bedroom units are 1,289.25 square feet.
And how big is the lot size?
The total lot size is 12.93 acres.
No, for each individual unit.
There's,
big is
there,
that?
there's one lot being created for the entire property.
Ms. Jones, can you tell us what the requirement is for the plat for single-family attached for this particular parcel?
The minimum lot size would be 3,000 square feet, and this proposal is over 12 acres.
Given that it's just a single lot.
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Are there any other questions for staff after hearing the applicant? Councilmember Noble.
The applicant's map showed commercial mixed-use zoning, but I have a zoning map, but I'm not able to find commercial mixed-use on our map. Is that?
It appears to me that this excerpt here is from the PUD zone document sheet 3. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, but if
I'm
that
happy to-
is, I could be happy to answer any questions about that. The
hap-
commercial mixed use is for parcel B to the south.
So the PUD calls it commercial mixed use?
Yes, ma'am, on sheet 3 for parcel B.
Okay. So the PUD can use language that isn't in our zoning ordinance?
Yes, ma'am.
And I think the map that you're referencing was the future land use map, which has the mixed use designation.
No, I'm looking at the zoning map.
And so the zoning map should say PUD for this parcel.
It does. And I also have the future land use map as well with me.
Okay, all right, just wanted to help clarify.
Yes, but I'm looking at your map.
Yeah.
That's what I want clarity on.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Gibson, do we have any virtual speakers?
No, Mayor.
All right, we do have one in-person speaker, which is Steve Douglas, so I'll invite you to come forward to speak under this item. Please remember to give your name and address for the record and keep your comments limited to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council, Steve Douglas, 10970 Unity Parkway. I was looking through this, there's a lot of presentations or documents on this application here, and as what we have seen with Legato, as far as expanding the road later on, I didn't see anything about future development as far as the road and what they're gonna pay for or share cost. But also, if you look at the comprehensive plan from 2010, it does reference mixed use. And as Legato is building out, they're actually complying with the comprehensive mixed use. Because that row just to the east of Tower between 96 and 88th is mixed use. And that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna do mixed use. There is no residential in there, as I know of today, I believe. And so that corner 96 is supposed to mirror pretty much that whole intersection from the west side, east side, south, and north side of 96. And when it comes to mixed use, as far as mixed use flex and this right here, coming to their own interpretation of what mixed use is, commercial, we keep going away from, this really should be mixed use with retail and commercial. And if you do have mixed use, basically it's retail on the bottom or commercial or residential on top, which this is not. I see that parcel D has been, that's 19.5 acres, has already been partialed out and split up with the attention to the top and then mixed use to the bottom. And, where we have residential, the F parcel, which is all residential, this is not a good location for this type of a mixed use. I believe it was over on mixed use for D, but that's mixed use. And then you got mixed use flex. So I think the zoning would have to change for them to go somewhere else, but this is not a very good idea, a very good selection of our process here. So being so close to Tower Road too, and I know talk about the schools, access to the schools, still gonna be a very busy intersection. To have kids cross Tower Road all the way over to South Lawn Elementary School. And then the layout, I understand that working with the fire district, but I still think that you need access off of Tower Road, but my time's up, so. I wish, I'm asking the council to not approve this based on mixed use.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Another question I forgot to ask, what pressure zone is this in?
This would be in pressure zone 32.
32, okay, and we don't have any issues in that pressure zone?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward and rebut anything that was said by our public speakers?
I'll just make one quick comment. We started down this road 2.5 years ago, based on the interpretation from staff, based on everybody's understanding that we fit within the zoning and the confirmation that we did fit. We've tweaked this plan a little bit over time to make sure that we were addressing the needs. I think Charlie mentioned it a little bit. I know there's conversation about the need to change the way the Commerce City LDC reads as it relates to this mixed use, but that's not how it's been done for a number of years. That's not how it was done when we set out down this path. That's why we've had staff support this whole time. So I understand that change is coming, but that change is not here. And as it sits, it's our belief that we do fit within the zoning. Some of the concerns that we've heard over the past about site access and some of those other things, again, it's not coming from us, it's coming from staff. We've coordinated with staff, we've reworked this plan so many times, I can't even tell you. We've spent 7 figures in investments trying to make sure that our plan lines up with staff, make sure that our plan lines up with engineering and the fire department, and the water department, all the public works, to make sure that we're doing things the right way. So my closing would just be that it's not me saying this. It's the folks that work for the city. It's the fire department. It's the public works. And we're going, we selected this site based on the agreement from the city that we were all on the same page, that we did fit the zoning, based on the interpretation that's been made over the last 10, 15 years, that's been working in this city. So that may change moving forward, but that's not what it's been throughout this process. So I guess that would be my final comment on the matter.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time again.
All right, this time I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm looking for a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2022-03. Councilmember Hurst.
So moved.
Councilmember Ford. I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2022-03. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Hurst.
Apologize for leaving my hand up.
All right. I really like the product that you guys build. I really like the fact that you offer people a different housing option that involves somewhat of a single-family home, that they don't have to go out and get a 30-year mortgage, a 15-year mortgage in order to pay for. And there's a lot of people who, for one reason or another, that's not where they are in life in order to get that mortgage. And I really think that having a product like this is beneficial to our city. And I think that having a product like this is beneficial to every community that you go out there. One of the things that you talked about was, people have the opportunity to sell their home and move into something like this and have maintenance-free living. And that's absolutely correct. And that frees up additional homes to be on the market, which controls the prices of homes and makes it so that everything is more affordable. It really is a product that you guys have been successful with because you're offering something that wasn't offered before that there's a need for. And there's no disputing that. My issue is on the location of it, though. I just don't feel that this is the right location for this housing. And you have one of the busiest thoroughfares in that part, if not the busiest thoroughfare in that part of the city. The amount of traffic going there, and there's a reason why it was designated that it was going to be mixed use. It was to buffer from those single-family homes, be it single-family detached or single-family attached. There was supposed to be a buffer in there. There was supposed to be. And you can look at the use by right, and absolutely, there is a use by right there. Fully agree. But there's also a bit out there that says a mix of uses. Those 4 words that are not being put in there. And when you look at the overall picture of what Settlers Crossing was supposed to be, it was supposed to be a mixture of uses from commercial to mixed use to single-family attached to single-family detached. But we're just picking in this one parcel and saying, this one here, we're not going to be mixed use, even though that's what was specified. And for that, I don't believe that it meets the intent of the PUD zoning document, and therefore does not comply with criteria A, and therefore I can't vote in favor of it. Will the clerk please read the title?
Resolution 2022-03, a resolution approving the Villa Settlers Crossing subdivision generally located south of East 100th Avenue and east of Tower Road.
Thank you. You want to do a roll call vote for us, please? Sorry, I should have asked for that on the front end.
Your vote is open.
Thank you. All right, motion is going to fail 4-3, 1 excused absence. All right, we're going to move on to resolutions. We have resolution.
If I may.
What's that?
So though the case was not approved, we still did not have a disposition of the matter. So you can, basically, it's still hanging out there. So you can continue this. There might be an alternative motion, potentially a motion to deny or a motion to amend. But the plat is not yet disposed of in terms of its status.
All right, thank you. My apologies on that. Does anybody on council wish to make a motion at this time? Councilmember Douglas?
I would like to make a motion to deny, please.
I'm going to ask you to expand upon that in order to give context as far as your justification on why it is that you want to deny.
I am going to deny based on criteria F and G. And that is because having that many residential spaces in that particular location, with the traffic conditions such as they are, is only going to make things worse. I don't believe there's adequate parking offered. I really feel like this is a public safety issue, especially for young kids looking to go to school. And I don't believe that it maintains sufficient levels of service to existing development. And that is my reason for denial.
All right, I have a motion to deny resolution 2022-03 based on approval criteria F and G. Is there a second? Mayor Pro Tem?
I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to deny resolution 2022-03 based on approval criteria F and G not being met. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Douglas?
Oh, that's all I had to say.
Councilmember Hurst?
Yeah, just a counter to that, I believe that not only do we have adequate infrastructure, we have comparables all up and down several corridors in our city that have been approved, and this product has been approved within our city on also an arterial road, also in Thornton, also in Brighton, on very like traffic roads in 27th Avenue in Brighton and Washington Street, which is a higher density road, traffic density road in Thornton. So I do believe we've done our due diligence to ensure that public safety has been prioritized.
All right, any other comments? Seeing none, I have a motion and a second to deny resolution 2022-03 based on approval criteria F and G. All those in favor? I have 2 ayes, 3 ayes, all opposed? Councilmember Kim, I don't believe I heard your vote. Nay. All right, that motion fails 4-3. We still have not had a disposition on this case. Does another council member wish to make a motion? Councilmember Kim.
So regarding this case, coming from March to August to September till now, there was a request or a motion at the time, I believe back in August, because there were some new developments that occurred with this specific development that there was a motion requested to go back to, believe it was to city staff, to have the developer work with them, but then have it run through the planning commission for them to take a look at. So with that, I would like to make that motion, obviously understanding that the mixed use purposes and the idea of commercial, commercial at the bottom and of course residential up top, and identified based on what Mayor Huseman said as well, with what defines as mixed use, a mix of uses. I would request that we can potentially make a motion to have it ran through and also with Planning Commission to review before it comes back to us again.
Councilmember Kim has made a motion to continue Resolution 2022-03, referring it back to staff and the Planning Commission before coming back before the City Council for another vote. Is there a second? Motion is going to fail based on the fact that there is no second. Any other council members wish to make a motion? All right, I'm going to make a motion to deny the Avila Settler Crossing PUD based on the following. The plat fails to comply with the approval criteria 21-324, parentheses 3, sub-parentheses A, in that 1, it allows only for residential use and is not consistent with the approved PUD, which requires mixed-use development. Is there a second? Mayor Pro Tem.
I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to deny the Avila Settler Crossing PUD based on approval criteria A. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. That motion is going to, Councilmember Noble, I don't believe I heard your vote. You're an aye. That motion is going to pass 5-2. One excused absence. All right. Now we're going to move on to resolutions. We have Resolution 2022-108 for the Metro Wastewater Agreement. Does anybody on council have any questions for staff regarding this resolution? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2022-108. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-108. Is there a second? Councilmember Ford?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2022-108. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, will the clerk please read the title?
Resolution 2022-108, a resolution authorizing an amendment to the non-exclusive access agreement granted to Metro Wastewater Reclamation Project for the Second Creek Interceptor Project.
I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2022-108. The title has been read. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0, one excused absence. Going to move on to ordinances on first reading. We have Ordinance 2456, an open space grant for Fairfax Park improvements. Any council members have any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion and a second to introduce Ordinance 2456 by council as seated and approve on first reading. Councilmember Hurst.
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second the
I have a
motion.
motion and a second to introduce Ordinance 2456 by council as seated and approve on first reading. Is there any discussion? Would just like to thank Adams County for this grant and for helping us to improve our parks and open spaces. Will the clerk please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Ordinance 2456, an ordinance amending the 2023 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by recognition of the Adams County Open Space Grant for Fairfax Park improvements in the amount of $700,000 and the authorization of the expenditure thereof. Your vote is open.
I'm a yes.
All right, motion carries unanimously 7-0 with one excused absence. We're going to move on to Ordinance 2457, open space grant for Stampede Park improvements. Do any council members have any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion and a second. Introduce Ordinance 2457 by council as seated and approve on first reading. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Hurst.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to introduce Ordinance 2457 by council as seated and approve on first reading. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Ordinance 2457, an ordinance amending the 2023 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Adams County Open Space Grant for Stampede Park improvements in the amount of $375,000 and the authorization of the expenditure thereof. Your vote is open.
Motion carries unanimously, 7-0, one excused absence. And again, thank you to Adams County for their support. We're going to move on to ordinances on second reading. We have ordinance 2453, a moratorium on residential metro districts. This ordinance was not approved unanimously and was therefore not placed on the consent agenda. This time, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2453 on second and final reading. Councilmember Kim.
So moved.
Councilmember Noble.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2453 on second and final reading. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Noble.
Oh, my apologies.
Seeing no request for discussion, will the clerk please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Ordinance 2453, an ordinance imposing a moratorium upon the city's processing of applications for approval of new service plans for residential metropolitan districts. Your vote is open.
Motion passes 5-2 with one excused absence. We're going to move on to case Z-981-22, rezoning the southwest corner of East 54th Place and Quebec Street. This ordinance was not approved unanimously and was therefore not placed on the consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve ordinance Z-981-22 on second and final reading. Councilmember Ford.
Move approval of Z-981-22 on second reading.
Councilmember Hurst.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance Z-981-22 on second and final reading. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, will the clerk please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Ordinance Z-981-22, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance and zoning map of the city of Commerce City, Colorado by rezoning the properties generally located at the southwest corner of East 54th Place and Quebec Street from medium-intensity industrial district I-2 to regional commercial district C-3. Your vote is open.
Motion carries 5-2, one excused absence. We're going to move on to administrative council business per council policy. Except for emergency or unforeseen items, council members are encouraged to submit administrative business items by the Tuesday before the meeting with another council member's endorsement. Do any council members have any administrative business items of an emergency or unforeseen circumstance? Seeing none, I just have one question under admin council business. About a year and a half ago, a vehicle took out the public artwork on Tower Road. Still hasn't been replaced. The solar panel for the lights for that project is still laying on the median. Surely we can do better. Mr. Huntington?
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to the repair of the project, we do have a vendor that was contracted to pick up the pieces off of the median. I can't speak to why the solar panel was left behind. I can't say the vendor that we have worked with to replace the piece had a hard time getting the materials, but that is closing in on completion, and we are working with them on trying to establish a time frame to get it reinstalled in the median, which should be within the next couple of months, I think.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Councilmember Noble?
Given the weather on Wednesday night dropping to below zero, I am concerned again about our plans for warming centers for homeless in Commerce City and what we will be doing, what the Rangers will be doing, what our team will be doing regarding folks who are unhoused.
Thank you for that, ma'am. That was actually part of my city manager report out. So that you're aware, we are across multiple departments. We are working to try to find voucher-based and/or I'll call it emergency shelter space that may be within other municipalities. As you may also be aware, we do have our recreation centers that can also serve as warming centers. Our emergency operations center manager, Kirk Dominic, is participating on a number of different calls and will give me an update to see how we look at various facilities in support of the severe cold weather that's going to be moving in. In particular, that since I have your attention on that, depending on what we are anticipating, which is below 50 degree due to wind chill and blowing snow and potentially a high of -5. We are planning accordingly, dependent upon what we find coming Wednesday evening, that we may close our city facilities to the staff, but to have them potentially serve as warming centers due to that extreme weather. So I share that with you now so that you all at least have a heads up when I determine or make a decision based on the input from our EOC manager. But I will share with you that our staff is expending any and all opportunities or options from the city and county of Denver, Adams County, and other municipalities and or nonprofit-based organizations that we may be able to help our urban encampers or encampment individuals to find somewhere to lay their head and or have warming stations for them during the day.
Thank you so much. And these steps and your humanity, particularly at this time of year, is very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I'd like to caveat on that. Are we opening our rec centers to people, or are we not opening our rec centers to people?
It's hard to say right now, sir. Like I said, we'll make that call about closing all of our city facilities, so they would not be open to the general public or to staff outside of those who are working with the Emergency Operations Center and or those facilities serving as warming centers. I would be making that decision when I have more credible information that's coming in from the National Weather Service and from our EOC manager, hopefully by tomorrow, and be able to make that determination, like I said, before the storm hits.
Thank you. Councilmember Noble, did you have anything else?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Any other administrative council business that is emergency or unforeseen? Seeing none, we're going to discuss the City Council Ward 3 vacancy appointment process. I'll invite Mr. Gibson to introduce the item.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and honorable members of the City Council. As we all know, former council member for Ward 3, Rick Davis, announced his resignation at the December 12th, 2022 study session / special meeting that night. As such, a council then had a resolution on a consent agenda which took his resignation letter, accepted it into the record, and it was placed on the minutes, officially declaring the vacancy. At this point, council now has no less than 10 and no more than 30 days to appoint somebody to fill that vacancy. I just want to confirm with council that you wish to proceed with filling the vacancy through the same manner in which you conducted the at-large seat after former council member at-large Megan Grimes resigned, in that we post the deadline for notice, which will be January 4th, Wednesday, January 4th at 5 p.m. So we can give people enough time during the holidays and after the new year to apply and place it in your agenda for the January 9th special meeting. Conduct applicant presentations at the January 9th special meeting. Previously, we did it for 5 minutes. If that is still an adequate amount of time for council, for everybody to hear applications from, or hear presentations from the applicants, we will notice that. And then you will have an opportunity on January 9th to determine who you would wish to fill that vacancy. That person will serve until the organizational meeting in 2023. Because there's unexpired remaining time for the term in which Councilmember Davis resigned from, there will be an election in Ward 3 for a 2-year term for the member to serve from November, or at the organizational meeting of 2023 through the organizational meeting of 2025. And at that point, they would be back on their normal schedule of being a 4-year term in November from 25 through 29, 29 through 33, so on and so forth.
Councilmember Noble?
Given the fact that we haven't done redistricting yet, what would happen if the person that we appoint doesn't wind up living in Ward 3 because the boundaries change? What would happen to if they wish to run in November?
Sure. So if this body appoints somebody that is currently within Ward 3 to serve through the organizational meeting in 2023 and city council adopts a map in which that person is no longer in Ward 3, then they would not be eligible, is my understanding, to run for the 2023 through 2025 appointment, because they would now be residing outside of that ward, as the charter requires that no councilman from a ward shall be eligible to hold the office of councilman from a ward unless he shall have been for 25 days immediately preceding the filing of the nomination petition or appointment to office, as the case may be, a resident of that ward. So those ward-specific appointments require minimum residency of 25 days based on the ward boundaries at the time of the election.
Okay, and this wasn't an issue with Megan Grimes because she was at large.
Correct.
I think that our city attorney seemed to want to say something as well. Did I misread your?
Nope, you were reading my body language accurately. Just wanted to clarify that no matter who you appoint, they will have to run for reelection and would be on the ballot in 2023, should they choose, and should they not be prevented from being able to do so due to redistricting. But the redistricting itself is something that would be occurring on the same ballot initiative. So
actually they wouldn't technically be living in the wrong neighborhood until the results of the election.
That's technically correct.
All right. Thank you.
All right, council, are we good with following the same process as before? Excellent. Make it happen.
Thank you so much.
All right, one last time, any other administrative council business before we move on to reports? Councilmember Kim.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and see about being added as a secondary to the Youth Commission. If there's no objections to be on there with Councilmember Douglas. So request that motion. Request the motion to be added to the Youth Commission as a secondary.
Councilmember Hurst.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to appoint Councilmember Kim to the Youth Commission as a secondary member. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Noble.
I wouldn't have any issue with it, but I'm just, in terms of our process, our protocol, if we have a first person who's the youth commission and then we have a second person who's the youth commission, can we have two people who are second?
We have typically, for this board and commission, we have had two members of the city council serve on it. Whenever we had the last organizational meeting a year ago, only one person volunteered to serve on it, so we've only had one council member on the commission. This would fill that void by having the 2 point people that are supposed to be appointed to the commission.
Then I happily will vote for Councilmember Kim.
Is there any other discussion? I have a motion and a second to appoint Councilmember Kim to the Youth Commission. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0, one excused absence. Is there any other administrative council business? Seeing none, let's move on to reports. For the first time, City Manager Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor. Last report for the year. Want to share with you, just in furtherance of discussion around the severe weather, our community well-being team will be actually outreaching Wednesday and obviously Thursday, depending upon the weather, with coats, sleeping bags, and other warm weather kits for those who we may find that are obviously without housing. But we will also be encouraging folks and trying to help them with getting rides to the various shelters that we're able to connect with. Just kind of share with you where we stand with this year as it relates to our continued growth and development. We have issued so far 1,020 certificate of occupancies for residential in the city. And we have 504 just from this year that are still in the pipeline. So still a rather robust year for us here at the city with the continued growth in our residential sector. From a public works standpoint, I believe you all saw that we released an RFP for the installation of a median along Highway 2 between 72nd and 112th. And this is obviously for safety purposes to avoid oncoming collisions and conflicts that we have seen over the years. At the same time, you might have noticed that our contractor has begun the replacement of various panels along 104th that have buckled over the time, or the issues that we've seen over the summer. That started last week, and obviously with weather dependent, we hope to be able to get that through the end of this year. We're using our 2K contingency funds for these repairs. Obviously, we repaired a number of potholes. We've had a multiple day repair along Niagara Street, so that has been a focus. And then we picked up some down poles on 60th Avenue in Kearney. And we are actually looking at fixing the crosswalk at that intersection as well due to some damage. Other than that, I want to be able to say on behalf of staff, have a happy holiday and a Merry Christmas and all of the above. Enjoy the time with your loved ones and your family and friends. We appreciate being able to come in and work for you all and do a great job.
Thanks, sir. Does anybody on council have any questions for City Manager Rogers? Seeing none, we'll move on to Interim City Attorney Hayter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would encourage you all to check your email boxes at some time, or your inboxes at some time in the next day or so. There you'll find finally a litigation update. Kind of gives you the status we were at following the last year. Of course, that does have privileged information in it, but I want to make sure that you're aware of that. At this time, I don't really have anything else to report to you. I think that I'll have some time next week where I'll definitely be unavailable. And my staff's going to be in and out of the river next week, but I'd still be available by phone. So if you need anything at all during that time, please feel free to reach out to me. And I think that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, sir. Does anybody have any questions for Interim City Attorney Hayter? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Does anybody on council wish to make a report? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to wish all the residents and staff and mayor and city council a happy holiday season and be safe, and blessings to everyone. That's all I had.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Ford.
I just wanted to do the same. Merry Christmas to all the city staff, all the residents of Commerce City, and my colleagues on the council.
Thanks, sir. Any others? Councilmember Douglas.
Yes, I'd like to echo the same sentiments. Happy holidays to everyone. And I just want to say what an honor it is to serve this city in this capacity as a public servant. It is one of the great blessings in my life, and I just want everybody to know that. Happy holidays to everyone in this city. And I wish everyone health and happiness, and I hope that we can help those who are suffering right now, who don't have homes, to at least find some warmth out of the cold and possibly some nourishment. I think about those people all the time when I'm going to sleep in my warm bed, and I think about what it would be like to be out in the cold right now, and I can't even imagine. I can't imagine what it would be like to be out in the cold with a kid and not being able to do anything about it. So I want everybody to recognize their blessings, and let's in the coming new year really think about those people who are going without, and let's figure out how we can help them. Thank you.
Councilmember Noble.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah. I really appreciate working with everyone here on the council and on the staff. We won't see you until the new year. Have a wonderful 2023.
Any others? Councilmember Hurst.
I was going to be a Scrooge, but I guess not. Not joking. No, happy holidays. This is a great year in 2022. I really look forward to, what's to come in 2023, and I appreciate all the hard work and effort that's put in by the city. I appreciate the participation from our community in this process. sometimes fun, sometimes not, but I really appreciate everybody's commitment to making this city better. And want to wish everybody a happy holidays from my family. Thank you.
All right, last week we did have a water commission meeting. Pressure zone 41 was, of course, a major area of discussion for that, and developing a development policy that is going to ensure that future development continues to pay the way for that infrastructure need, as opposed to placing it on the back of current customers that are out there. Like to thank everybody in the city staff for all the work that you've done all year, especially everybody that's sitting in the audience here with us. Your commitment to be with us every Monday evening and you know, represent and be here to answer questions, give the presentations and everything doesn't go unnoticed. And thank you very much for your effort. For all the workers out there that continue to keep this city running, from the recreation centers to public works to the police department, everybody out there, thank you for your contributions to the city over the last year. I know that next year is going to be even bigger and brighter. Looking forward to what this city can accomplish with new leadership in place and what that leadership can do. Thank you to all the residents for entrusting us to sit up here and make the decisions on your behalf. Thank you to all the council members that continue to come out here every Monday night. And we don't always get along, but we continue to move the city forward in a positive direction. And I thank you for your commitment to your community as well. On behalf of Jen and Tristan, would like to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, Merry Christmas, whatever holiday it is that you celebrate. May it bring you good tidings for the new year. Again, please do not drink or drive. If you need a ride, give me a call. Will either come pick you up myself or make sure that a ride is arranged for you so that you get home safely. There is no need to put yourself and others at risk. We don't need another fatality in this city because of a DUI. Please just don't do it. Thank you. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Have a good night. We're adjourned.